go ahead, Kimberly, and see if there's any extensions there.
Okay, we start on page 6 of the agenda if anybody wants to follow along. The first one is 318 Wilbur Avenue, 916 Neal Avenue, 292 and 296 West First Avenue, and 870 to 874 Dennison Avenue.
I may have to do 916, just maybe just due to proximity. I just don't know how close that one is. We have some addresses that jump in that area,
Okay.
so just in case.
I'll mark that on the minutes then.
Thank you, ma'am. Speaking of minutes, I guess we'll move to that, just approval of last month's minutes. I unfortunately was not present last month, so I kind of need a little bit of help of if there was anything on the minutes that was not representative of the hearing. No. So can I have a vote or a motion?
Make a motion for approval.
Second.
Any discussion at all? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed.
We will move on to the items for business. So application number 1 is VV-22-03-005. This is 910 Dennison Avenue. This application is for variances, including the parking lot tree, parking lot screening, maneuvering, parking setback, the rear yard area, and the AR-O permitted uses. The applicant is asking for a recommendation on the updated variances and an updated site plan. The parking spaces have been increased in depth from 16 feet to 18 feet, and the additional variance request to the parking setback on the First Avenue side of the property has been added. All proposed additions to the existing building have been previously approved by the Victorian Village Commission. Staff does recommend approval of the application with any clarifications or modifications made by the commission. Basis for this recommendation is City Code 3116.11, these standards for alteration. Specifically 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and City Code 3116.12, these standards for new construction. And the Victorian Village guidelines on new construction too. And then I will hand it back to you, Sean, so we can get our looking sorted.
Thank you. Could you state your name for the record?
Michael Yankelovich.
Heidi Bolliard, Sunset Living Architecture.
Perfect. Do you agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Anything to add or clarify?
So just for clarification, so once we went to zoning, they had given us some inaccurate information when we were initially working for pulling the site plan together to get that approved by you. So the only difference is I know that there's a tree or a tree variance on there. They asked us to reword that because the wording on it was confusing, but nothing has changed from what was previously approved. The rear yard setback is still the same setback that was previously approved. The privacy fencing is still the same as what was approved. We did change the parking lot spaces from 16 feet to 18 feet per the request. And so that caused a dimensional revision or change, but nothing has moved. It's just a dimension change. And then the same thing with the setback dimension. They requested a different setback on there, so we had to shift that on the site plan. So nothing has changed that you previously saw and approved. It's just dimensional things on the site plan that they've requested.
Any conversation? Any chance or any feedback? Is the tree that was is at first there was a tree that was shown in that area where the kind of parking apron is going to be removed? Is that the tree that was kind of
No, what's on there? It's the two on the side yard between
gotcha.
the neighboring property on the east property line there.
Okay.
And those were there previously.
Okay.
So are these trees that we see on First Avenue and Dennison, are they there? Or they're proposed?
They're,
in the depth.
yeah, they're there, but they're small.
They're growing, they're only, I'd say, 3-4 years old,
Okay. And
15 foot.
just to frame that property, that little piece on the end, I think there should be a tree there. On Kleiner,
On that alley,
no, do you see that? So I have 1, 2, 3 on Denison going north. We should have a fourth on that little, on the end of it. So as I'm going into your building and I see your building, it's framed by trees.
I believe that with parking lot view, we're not allowed to add a tree there. Yeah,
Really?
that's also not their property.
That's not our property, that belongs to the condo building across
Yeah,
the Denison.
That's parking for the.
Okay,
And did we talk about along that note, on First, where the drive aisles being, there's overhead line there, is that part of the issue, or is there an issue there? So there's 2 trees, plain south, are we able to add another one? That curb apron current, since that's going away.
That apron is gone, and it is asphalted now, but since it's blocked and parking is given to the city, it would be easy to just drill a hole in this asphalt and make it into a tree or whatever.
Well, if that were the case, the pavement would come out in its
Yeah.
entirety. But I think there's also power lines there that would somewhat limit your ability to plant underneath it.
I think there's a tree here. Neighboring property has a tree right there. There is a tree right on the edge of the neighboring property there already, and it's pretty big, so I don't think anything is really blocking another tree. It's just the asphalt would have to come out, and maybe a section of it, and that wouldn't be difficult.
Well, yeah, I mean, if that entire apron can come out, I don't know if the city has asked you to replace the curb there, if that curb island's coming, the access into the property is being eliminated, if they're asking for any improvements to replace that curb essentially to fill it in.
Right.
If that were the case, you could theoretically continue to tree lawn, put a tree there if it's the appropriate, depending on the height and restrictions with overhead lines.
Right.
Any other comments or dialogue, guys?
The 15.5 feet for drive aisle it's gonna be challenging. That's tight.
It's the same as what it is now.
Okay.
So we've not changed it. We've actually improved it some on the west side of the
Okay.
property.
Okay.
So it actually moves a little closer to the or to the structure. Because right now there's a bit for a wide sidewalk.
For potential, I think it's just the variances, so it's just a kind of a motion to recommend the series of variances that have been talked about with the revised site plan that was, approached via zoning. So, is there a motion by any chance of being able to recommend the series of variances?
yes, let's, application 2203, 005, 910 Denison Avenue, recommendation for presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, guys. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed in terms of being recommended, right? So, thank you so much.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it again. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for working with us.
So thanks for all your help.
Yep, very helpful.
Okay, Application number 2 is BB-22-03-006. This is for address 1126, 1128, 1140 Harrison Avenue. This application is to renew a demolition approval for existing units. And window wells and proposed change of siding from the composite level siding to the fiber cement lap siding. Drawings were reviewed and approved at the March 11th, 2020 hearing. After the demolition, new build, and with recommendation for variances, HPO staff had been waiting on final construction drawings prior to the issuance of certificate. And that was shortly before things kind of shut down as well. The COA was issued November 17th of 2020 with an updated set of drawings. Changes that occurred between the two drawings were minor changes in proposed landscaping, changes to window rhythm size, and changes to door styles. This was approved by staff, so that approval kind of holds in a sense. Additional changes from the stamped drawings to the current drawings are some additional minor changes in landscaping, egress windows, window wells, and the proposed change in siding. HPO staff has requested that the elevation drawings and floor plans accurately reflect the windows on both the front and rear. These details are noted elsewhere in the drawings, and those are the egress windows and window wells. The demo and new build approvals need to be renewed in separate motions. Just as a note, staff recommends approval of the application with the condition that the requested drawings and requested elevation drawings and floor plans are submitted to staff prior to issuance of a certificate. Basis for staff recommendation is City Code 3116-12, the standards of construction. City Code 3116-14, the standards for demolition. John, I'll hand it back over to you so we can get our applicant sworn in.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Can you state your name for the record?
Michael McLaughlin.
Do you agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Of course, yes.
Thank you, sir. Michael, is there anything you have to add or just to kind of walk through?
Sure, I'm going to just recap. We had, like she mentioned, we had this approved, I think, in the last meeting before the pandemic. Spent, so it got tabled for a while. The personal life changed and decided I don't want to be a landlord anymore. I sold the project off. The new owner has requested a couple of these changes. They're, putting some occupied space in the basement. So we need some.
It's the American dream. What do you mean you don't want to be a landlord?
Yeah, I had another kid instead. So I still have more occupants to manage. My own. Yeah. But so they wanted to add an egress window for a basement that's on the rear, it faces the rear yard of the house. It's two windows on the west facade, which face Harrison. And then the original siding was Oral V groove rustic siding. It's like $8,000 more than lap siding, so that's out. It's just fiber cement lap siding in lieu of that. So then the landscaping changes are to make room for window wells. You can plant
Okay.
window wells. So pretty limited changes. Everything else, size, windows, everything else is the same.
Okay, very helpful, sir. Very helpful. All right, Commission. So, any thoughts, comments, concerns?
I don't have any. Anyone else?
None for me.
I don't know.
Can I ask one question? I just want to make sure. Is there any concern with the window wells at all in terms of the occupied basement? Yeah, the occupied space. Just
I think
what about the ones to the west? Any concerns related to those that face Harrison?
no. Do you have a problem with it?
It seems like they're stepped back. It seems like the landscaping, I think we need to encourage potentially the landscaping to be done in a manner that allows the wells to be, because there's no details in the wells. So I think we need to encourage the landscaping to screen them in theory. I understand the occupied space and was trying to, but just given the proximity of the view to the street. It seems like we would want to encourage those being screened, I guess, that's what I'm trying to say.
Good.
I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
So yeah, I'm having a hard, so clarify that. So usually I mean, it's a pass by glance that I might see a well.
Yeah.
And so, or I might see a grade over it. So what is your meaning screening it?
So I don't know what the details of what the end result will be. You can have raised plastic, you can have raised metal with, there's no detail related to that right now. So do we want to,
Do we know what that?
So actually, we don't. Part of the issue is for the basement, we're trying to get, again, because it's occupied now, a little more head height out of that. That is determined in part by the depth of the neighboring property's basement, where their footings are, what the angle of repose of their influence on the soil is.
Right.
That's going to set our depth, which will set the first floor location. So when I say window well, there's a chance that these would really be foundation windows that are entirely above grade. Because the whole thing lifted, or they may be, quite a bit below grade because the neighboring basement was deep enough to allow us to bring the building down into the earthwork. So that's a construction.
So then can we move ahead with the caveat that we see the details when they? Are you okay with that?
That's fine. Yeah, I can submit once we have determined where that is. Yeah.
And the final detail of that, Commissioner Connor's point is also what happens in front of it in terms of the plant material to either, if need be, to be able to buffer those elements sticking up out of the ground, or if they're, at grade or below, it could be low stuff and be
Sure.
an issue.
And I would say on the front side, since we're just looking, those aren't the egress windows.
Right.
Those wouldn't have grates or corrugated metal wells protruding above grade. Those would be, you would just either see the window or you don't really see the window.
do you think that we just to try to help the conversation, is it beneficial to just bring those details back for those two conditions?
Okay.
Because those two conditions will vary, and then we can get the clarity.
Sure.
There's just been a lot of discussion related to those and recent past projects.
Yeah.
I think just clarifying what the end result would be very helpful.
Yeah, that is true, because like the Parade homes, they've done the like almost window well landscapes where they step up.
Yeah.
And I look downstairs and I had this little, so it's
It would be
valid.
better.
It's
Okay.
valid.
Okay, no problem.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So how do we form that motion? So,
Okay.
make a motion for, application 22-03, -006, 1126 Harrison Avenue, changes as presented, with the additional requirement that once the applicant finds out, the condition for window wells, he'll come back to, Kimberly. And is it just Kimberly? I think it probably, do you guys want to see it?
I think we want to see it.
Okay,
I really
and
think
you can
so.
distribute it to the commissioners.
Okay, so it's kind of
Or
a subcommittee
like sub-
review in
Yep.
a sense.
Yep.
So this is item A too, I kind of wrote that down. This would be item A, because we have two. We got an A and a B, so this would be
Yeah,
item A.
well, no, we have A, B, C because you can't,
Got it. Got it.
the demo was issued separate from the new build.
So we have to do the windows. I thought we had all the minor changes would be A, and then the demolition renewal would be B. Am I missing something? I'm sorry.
So are we saying, okay?
Okay, that makes sense to me, because
Stop.
we're doing kind of the renewal with the changes. That's an update.
Is that fair?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I'm just thinking in terms of three separate items, and you're right, it should be smushed together with the first two, with the renewal of the, it wouldn't so much
So
make sense.
what we just said,
An update.
what we just said was that renewal plus window wells to be reviewed.
So as part of A, we're talking the minor changes and the renewal for the new proposed project is item A. The stipulation on item A is conditioned upon once the applicant understands the final grading conditions and the elevation related to the basement,
Yes,
they would have to come back with those details of the two area well conditions to staff for a subcommittee
Yes.
review and approval.
okay. So that's A, that's what we just
That's
said. Okay, so
Go ahead.
do you have that, Kimberly?
Yes.
So do we want to make a motion for that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, Commissioner Hesse, didn't you?
I think
Well, I mean, a second, I'm sorry.
I'll second that, I
Okay,
think.
perfect. So we have a motion, second. Is there any discussion? Any additional discussion? Perfect. We'll go ahead and cast a vote then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item A passed.
Okay.
Okay,
Now we make a motion for the
and
demolition.
then we need item B, which is the
Okay,
demolition.
application,
Renewal.
Hmm.
Demolition renewal.
application 22-03-006, 1126 Harrison Avenue. This is Part B, and that's the renewal of the request for demolition.
I second the motion.
Thank you. All right, cast a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed.
For my clarity, A included the carriage house then as well.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Every-
yes, it was the renewal of both. Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's a great point from that perspective. So yes, sir. We were thinking
So
project.
Won't resubmit any of the carriage house because there are no window well.
Correct.
No.
Exactly, your only
That's correct.
submission will be, once you figure out the grade of the basement, the window well level.
Yes, sir.
And just to note, I can't issue the COA until we have those details, and I can't issue the renewal for the demo because the demo is contingent on the new project. So they typically come out together and I issue them because we've had issues in the past of projects not having the replacement, and it's just one of those, we like them to go out together, so that's how I issue them.
Yeah, they'll need the COA to get the building permit.
Yeah,
So we'll have to do the investigation before we actually start construction then.
yeah,
Right.
you're exactly right. Without impacting the existing structure, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, it's really about measuring the neighbor's basement.
That's
and
correct.
Verifying
That's correct.
what the existing
That's correct.
condition is.
I only wanted to be clear because I didn't want you guys to get in trouble from that perspective.
Yo,
So that
tear
tear
it down.
It's a-
Yeah.
You know, and just make sure, you know, I know you know, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Perfect.
thank you, Mike, appreciate it.
Good.
All right, thanks for working with us.
No problem.
Been a long process.
Yeah. I'm in a much better place though.
There you go.
Yes, congratulations as well.
Bye.
Okay, application number 3 is VV-22-02-004. This is 685 to 689 Hunter Avenue. The application is to remove the existing deck and floor and railing, and the existing garage below will remain unaltered. Replace the railing with the timber tack railing per the submitted documentation. The railing would be 4 feet 4 inches high, and the new deck flooring is to be that timber tack 5/4 by 6 inches composite flooring, Pro Series and the pecan. I've included the minutes from the February 9th hearing where this was last reviewed. Any replacement material that is not wood does need to have a smooth texture. The applicant has followed the commission's suggestion to replace the railings as they existed, but with a different material. Staff recommends approval of the application with the condition that the railings are wood instead of the composite material per City Code 3116.11, the standards for alteration. Basis for the recommendation is, as I said, the standards for alteration is City Code 3116.11, specifically 2, 4, 5, 6, 9, and 10. And Commissioner Conyers, I'll hand it back to you so we can get our applicants forward.
Thank you. Can you state your name for the record, sir?
Seanhundley,
Do you agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do,
Thank
yes.
you, sir. Anything to add to the application?
Just that, the conversation is about the material. And I know you guys said this has come up before. And there's such great demand for composite materials over wood because of the age. So here we have it. And this is the style the style and colors that they propose, that they're proposing.
So do we get to get up and?
You want to touch it? Yeah.
Feel it? Yes.
Yeah.
So bear with me, the one
Kick the
thing,
tires, yeah. Kick
the
the tires.
handrails are from remnants from last year, so there's just some things in storage, but everything else is as is. I did include down here, I know, everything has to be smooth, so This is the intended face side, which does have texture. This is a smooth side, and those are skirt boards, so that smooth side would typically be run on a stair, and that would be the stringer, so it's intended to be exposed. I installed each of these so that you would have a chance to see, just how that texture looks from a distance, and then feel it. But yeah, I mean, it's.
And the black is what's being proposed?
That is what's being proposed. Already, the HOA has proposed color changes to the building that have been approved. And they feel that the black ties into those approved colors.
Did we get a reading on the dividers?
So those were scrapped.
They were scrapped.
They were scrapped. And the plan moved to just replacing as is.
Okay.
I think the homeowners plan to maybe have potted plants or something, something movable that will create that privacy.
I like this 10 times better.
Yeah.
10 times better. Okay, let's kick the tires.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. I'm kind of impressed. So none of you don't see any
I don't see any
hardware.
hardware. We don't see any hardware. All the hardware is concealed. As it's just a corner, part of the stability of it comes between its being set between two posts, of course. So the bottom is just, there's some wiggle here that isn't there. But each post is just a post sleeve. So there's a 4x4 inside of there, which is lagged to the framing structure.
So is this, how is this?
So it's a composite material that's based in wood, but there's
Okay.
also
And then and then this outside edge is.
in epoxy, a plastic epoxy. So TimberTech, the flooring is rated for 35 years, and they do this solar and water testing in their in-house labs, 35 to 50 years. The handrails and the radiance rail have the same grade on them.
Now, do they also do turn posts?
What's a term?
Or so if this was a porch?
8 foot posts?
Yeah,
They do.
they do.
They do. The only thing they don't do, which I've kind of run into, is privacy fencing. And I've
Interesting.
priced out building one myself just from, skirt boards and the 8 foot posts. And it's just outrageous. I mean, they really sell the 35 to 50 year life, and that's how you have to
Yeah,
think about the cost of the project.
but holistically, it'd be nice if they did everything because.
It gives it a cohesive look. I mean, right now, I'm designing a patio, we want to incorporate the fence and the handrail and the pergola and all of that, which because all of this is prefabricated as the builder, really limited as to what I can design.
Yeah.
So just about this particular project, so this is like this deck is gonna be like for like.
Like for like
In terms of.
that,
Fascia.
so this fascia board will be like for like, as you can see, this is the smooth side intended to be kind of the back side of the skirting, but it would still be visible.
So this is visible and
That's
the gutter line actually sits below.
Below that, correct? Correct.
The gutter. Okay,
Correct.
that's what we should find.
I'm impressed with this.
So, one of the things that.
Well, I'll tell you, that's a great point. And when I'm called out to decks, I mean, you see, I use TimberTech and I'm a registered TimberTech installer because I think it's the best product. There's a lot of composite materials available that do not stand up, that do not pass the test of time, even a few years. Whether it's sagging between the 16-inch span of our joists, or if it's improper design where you don't have the bowl nose here and you have exposed cuts. All of these cuts, as I've done here, even on your miter joints, they need to be sealed and then glued together. So it's mitered so that you don't see the cut, but also it's sealed so that water isn't getting inside the material. So if I were in your shoes and say, okay, we're going to start allowing this composite material, that's what I tell my clients, is there's a tremendous difference in the grades available. unlike wood. I mean, unlike the difference between pine and, Brazilian.
So
Right?
what would you call what you just described?
I would call this pro-grade.
Prograde, and then the whole idea of the miter with the,
So
what would you call that?
no exposed cuts, I think is what you would have to say. There's no exposed cuts.
Yeah, I think we just have to be careful on setting some guardrails.
I mean, because on a,
Move to allow a alternative material.
because on a piece of wood, we would finish that just by a nice coat piece, then you would just knock.
Yep.
Put it on those exposed areas, but
Right.
this is, you're doing an adhesive to cover that.
That's right. And I mean, as you can see, the cut just doesn't, you'll never get that to look right.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And then the other one is more so geared towards this particular project, right, in terms of, like, I know there's been some thoughts about trying to understand opportunities for alternate products for, let's just say, our porches. But in this case, we're not talking about that because of the age and the associated, this property is completely different, right? It's from the 80s, 90s, whatever this property was. So it's not a traditional porch. So you mean, so in the description or in our thought, we should make a little distinction related to that. So then that way, these products are not necessarily applicable like for like.
Well, I think that
Yeah.
we need to start to walk in. to
Completely.
this.
Completely.
And I think this is fine for this application.
Right,
And I think when we have installers that are thinking ahead
completely.
and we see details that merit the inclusion on that kind of stuff,
Very
we should look at that also.
Amen. Amen.
Because,
Yes.
I mean, this is the first time, because the people will look at that and they'll say, well, I can just go to Lowe's.
That's correct.
Take that stuff out, and that is not the direction.
That's not the go. And the specification sheet that Kimberly asked for, I think has a lot of, will have that information there. Because the big box store is not, it's not gonna have this, it's not gonna have the 35-year, 50-year warranty. on it.
Okay.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Thanks, Sharp.
Very
Thank you.
helpful. Thank you so much.
You're certified for timber tag.
For timber tag, yeah.
Tracks or.
I've used Trex, yeah, I've used Trex, and they do have some of the fencing material, privacy screening. In my opinion, they're the big ones.
Very helpful.
Not to say that they, I've installed a lot more timber tech.
I think that's key is trying to understand what the premium product is.
Yes.
For sure. All right, so with that, is there any further discussion or can we move to a motion?
I think we could move to a motion, and I'm just excited about this because all of the exercises that you were going through and what they were going to do
Yeah.
versus what
Right.
you've come up with is so clean, and it's gonna make that place
Yeah.
look so much better than the extended garage and
Yes.
all that stuff.
So I think it'll look really good.
I'm happy with that.
One quick thing, back to the color of the black,
Yeah.
the doors and frame, those becoming black, those are all green.
Those will all be painted with the new color scheme.
What
And
is
it's a blue and a maroon and a gray. The light fixtures will be changed to black on the garage.
That would be my only.
Do you want, and does that information come in as an application?
I don't recall if that had been previously approved as a staff approval because
Remember either, right?
the paint is one of those things that, I do staff approve.
So I just, for
I
that,
don't recall off the top of my head, but that doesn't mean it hasn't come in the past couple months.
I have it here. The approval here and the paint colors here. Like, if anyone wants to see that, or.
and the light fixtures as well?
And the light fixtures, those were a note from Jackie, one of the homeowners.
Do you know when the COA was approved?
Yes.
I feel like they may have had something last month.
12/22/2021. 12/22.
Okay, a couple months off.
it may be beneficial if the lighting is just being changed as well.
Yeah.
To just kind of get that over to Kimberly, just to make sure that's included, just to keep everything above board.
I understand.
Any further discussion? Do we have any concerns? Are we able to go ahead and proceed with the motion?
I have a motion to approve VV 22-02-004 as submitted. Also to specify that there be no exposed cuts and adhesive or sealant, as we discussed.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Area.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed.
So I'm going to ask for some clarifying points because we discussed them. So one of the reasons that this is being approved is because it's the 80s, 90s model build. And we also note that this project is being considered because it's on the rear of the building? Or would that make a difference?
I think it's new construction.
I think the new
It lies
construction.
under new construction.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure because we kind of skirted around it.
I just want to give us some more room as it relates to this and being challenged with other projects or front porches. And so,
Yep.
you know.
Got a lot of pressure on you, man.
Okay, awesome. Anything further, Kimberly?
And for the clarification with the smooth, is that okay? Do we want to add that to the motion or?
Yes, we want the smooth, right? We
Yes.
want the smooth finish to be in kind with everything else that we've been doing.
Okay,
So yes, ma'am.
all the questions I have for this one. So thank you all.
Thank you. A heck of an effort.
Thanks for
Yes,
working
thank you.
with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so
for your
much.
time. Yeah.
Now be careful.
Do you need some help with the door?
I should, right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
You're welcome.
That's the problem with that stuff. Is people go to Lowe's and they see that, and you see the L bracket attaching with various sort of stuff, arrows.
Completely different. No. Yes, completely different.
Completely different.
Seeing pretty significant installation. But it's not your truck, it's.
I want to make sure before I start reading off the staff report, are you here for 686 Park Street?
I'm here for a class to observe.
Oh, sorry, to put you on the spot.
No, you're good. If the meeting's over, I can leave, or I'm just gonna stay until it's over. if that's
No,
okay.
you had the unluckiness of being the only person in the audience, so I wanted to make
No,
sure.
that's okay. I hope I'm not this group.
Not at all. Not at all.
Usually those observers bring in some kind of treat.
You heard it the other way.
No, listen to Commissioner Hisson. He's fine. All right, since Commissioner Hisson has stepped out, I will wait before he comes back, but since we did have some additional folks come in, we are on number 4, which is 686 Park Street. What application are you two here for?
Number 6, 67, yeah.
All righty. Commissioners, since they are the only other people, do we want to hop around?
I don't mind hopping around just to try to help, manage some time and get everyone out.
Everything,
So
so
yes,
you came at like perfect time.
Yeah.
We're waiting on a couple other applicants, so we're gonna wait until Commissioner Hisson comes back, then I'll read off your staff report. If you want to wait to come up until then, or, we'll also kind of see if somebody else is coming in, but we do try to take them in order and are flexible in that.
you want to check and ask what he's here. Was he here before?
Sir, which application are you here for?
It's for Marcellus.
Okay,
Marcellus.
all right. We're on application number 4, but I don't think they're here quite yet, so we're trying to see which one we want to.
All right.
So he'll be first. 'Cause he's
4-5.
He's 5.
Okay. We're just waiting on Commissioner Hisson to come
You
back.
guys are having schedule tonight.
Well, we're actually a little bit behind
Okay.
because number 4 was supposed to be heard about 4:30,
Okay.
but we're at 4:45.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if the applicant's running late or,
Sure.
Nolan, you might have to remind me to circle back to number 4. Because I want to make sure we get number 4 before we do the conception.
We'll second it.
That's the door with the new fixed. Balance to match the others. I've included the comments from the April 14th, 2021 meeting minutes. Infill staff does not support the proposed alteration to the storefront. This is per City Code 3116.11. These standards for alteration. The original contributing features should be maintained. The historic storefronts were renovated approximately 2006, and the designs were replicated, including any deteriorated tile entries. While the materials have been updated, the recessed doorway and tile flooring are historic and were required to be put back to the original storefront design. In review of the preliminary floor plan, it appears that the proposed interior renovations can be accomplished without removing the recessed entry, tile floor, and doorway. Now, the loss of the storefronts or the store interiors was expressed at the last hearing during the review of 989 North High Street. HPO staff has requested scaled measured drawing of proposed window details just because what was received was a little small. The vinyl decals on the windows should not be advertising products or goods per the shortened design guidelines. Staff does recommend continuance of the application to allow the applicant time to finalize the design on the final window decals. Basis for recommendation is City Code 3116.11. These standards for alteration, specifically calling out to the distinguishing characteristics of the property shall not be destroyed. The removal or alteration of any historic materials or distinctive architectural features shall be avoided whenever possible. And 3, each property should be recognized as a product of its time. Alterations that have no historical basis and would seek to create an earlier appearance should be discouraged. 5, the distinctive stylistic features and examples of craftsmanship that characterize a property should be treated with sensitivity, as well as the short note design guidelines on signage. And it's back to you, Sean, so we can get our applicants sworn in.
Thank you, Kimberly. You guys, you can come up. Thank you.
Hey there.
Yeah. Thank you again for pushing ahead a little bit, since we know you guys are not due till 5. So thank you. Is that everybody though? We're not rushing you guys. Is that
Not at all.
okay? So could you go ahead and state your name, get you sworn in?
Wayne Schick, Cameron Mitchell Restaurants.
Carter Bean Architects.
Perfect. Thank you. Do you agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. All right. Do you have anything to add or to help the application in terms of the presentation?
Do.
Yes, sir.
Martellus has been in the NCAP space for how long now, Wayne?
14 going on 15 years.
14 going on 15 years. And the space next to them has finally come available so that they can expand that space. And it's really being done in conjunction with a pretty sizable overhaul of the existing space as well. The interior seating layout, as you can see at the top of ZA2, proposes a banquette arrangement of seating Right there, yeah. So that is what is really instigating our desire to flush out those windows. And currently there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different configurations of storefronts on this building right now. So there really isn't a predominant arrangement on this building. The way we have proposed infilling this, we feel is the most sensitive way to the existing building in that the 2 columns on either side of the recess would stay in their current location. And we would bring then, or we infill that front wall and cut it in 2 to somewhat simulate the 4-part windows that you see at either end of the building. Of course, those on the north end of the building are our operable La Cantina windows, for which we were in here just a few months ago to replace with aluminum. So we're making that upgrade there. And part of the thinking behind leaving those 2 existing columns on either side of the recess is so that in the future, if this did need to get restored back to its current recess door configuration, we would already have those side windows in place, and it would just be a matter of reinstalling that recessed door area. So, the scope of that infill, I don't know how much more detail is really necessary in that the detailing on either side is currently there, and all we're doing is putting that 2-window infill in the middle and replicating the panel treatment at the bottom to be the same as all the other bulkhead paneling that's along the face of the building there. So in this particular view, you see the top, which is existing condition or representative of existing condition, and the bottom being the infill, as well as the Marcella's graphic on the awning, which of course, the awnings on this building are all the same. The only different characteristic of ours is that it has that white lettering on it. So we would like to continue that on the storefront. So really the infill and the awning, that's all we're proposing at this time. Signage, we're not proposing any change at this time. The gold messaging and piping on the windows, again, is consistent with all the others on our storefronts. And you can see in some of in the example photos that we have at the beginning of the package, it doesn't jump right out at you. It's, with all the visual activity that's going on along High Street there, and all the reflectiveness you get off of that glass, it seems like a lot of signage and graphic, but it really kind of disappears. So we're really just looking to get that consistency of design. You see it more from the interior of the space than you do from the exterior of the space. So I think that sums it up from an architectural and design standpoint. Wayne, do you have anything to add?
Not a lot there, just to speak about the interior for a second. I know that's not necessarily under this purview, but there are 4 beautiful original to the building brick archways in the restaurant. And this will restore those and open those back up. So they're currently infilled with drywall and art. So it's the interior of the space is going to be gorgeous and really respect, what was originally built there. So we're very excited about that.
And so then so what you're filling up, are those tiles going to stay?
They would not stay, no. We would level out the floor in that area. I believe those tiles were installed in the 80s. The date that this was.
So from what I understand, because the renovation predates me, that the storefronts were taken out, I think without approval, and then they were put back in to what was previously there. So while the material itself isn't historic, the openings are.
Sure, right.
Those tiles are there
To replicate what was there before, so.
That's what I need.
That's the key, right? We could.
Because if they were original, I would say, sorry, Charlie's, but we need to see that palimpsest of what was, if you're gonna fill that in. But if it's new material, then I'm not gonna be.
Yep.
crazy strict on that.
To add on to what Wayne had mentioned earlier about the interior and preservation of this building, we've noticed over the years of occupying this space, additional settling and the interior floor is sinking in certain areas. And while it's not something they have to do, we've met with a structural engineer and we're going to be, jacking that floor structure back up and stabilizing the interior structure. So there's a lot of preservation that's going on in this space that, isn't necessarily required of us, but it's voluntarily being done.
Anything else? All right, so we got 3 items, right? So number 1 is the infill, 2 is the awnings, and 3 is the gold piping grab. Right, so it's got 3 components. So let's start with the easy ones. So gold piping, any thoughts or concerns? Or
I'm fine with it.
questions? Just the graphic kind of conditions with that, right? Just that consistency.
Given what's existing there, it's so discreet that,
Okay. Next one is just the awnings. The awnings themselves, black awnings, it's just a repetitive Marcellus indication. Is there any concerns with kind of replicating that additional signage related to that space?
What was the original condition? Can I see that? Can you go back?
It's at the top there in that view.
Yeah.
So right now, is Marcellus represented twice on the storefronts? So the 2 storefronts that are existing, it's already articulated twice.
Correct.
So again, that the streetscape, it doesn't bother me either. It's more consistent than just being done.
right.
So, okay,
Wanted to make sure. So that's 2. 2 is done. All right. And we'll probably figure this out. So, and then number 1, is there any concerns or conversations that we should have related to the infill, given staff's recommendation?
so part of me says, from an architectural standpoint, I get it. The consistency of to say something that they're only placing the 2. Is it possible that there could just be an offset within that? So I have my 2 existing
Right.
panels and my infill panels just offset a little bit, so it gives some kind of mention to that. I don't know whether that would give us anything, Sean.
Absolutely. Sure.
What do you think about that?
Create a shadow line there.
Just, yeah,
Yeah, that column, for lack of a better term, at that corner is roughly a 6.5 or 7 inch square piece, so we could go to the back of that.
so it would say something was there.
Sure.
You're not totally yanking it away.
Gives us a nice break point for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you'd like to see that, we'd be happy
That
to
would
do
be
it.
my,
I think constructability, I think it'll help, for sure. But just in terms of if the plan is to leave the 2 existing columns that are already there and infill the interior, I think constructability would be a lot, it would help the transitions and such. So I think just being able to pull off a flush condition it's going to be a lot more challenging. Specifically, those 2 sides are probably not identical as they are right now. They're not the same plane.
By
They're not-
fractions
I
of
mean,
an inch, you're right.
so
so that would be my only input.
Great.
I understand that. I agree. I'm still having problems with, the notion about the 4 lights not being even. And I know and I understand. So on one area we're saving and we're paying homage to, the existing opening, but then the resultant is such a singular notion because of you can't replicate the base size. So on one side of the coin of the building, you got 3. Then on this side, you got 4 that are equal panes, and now all of a sudden this object has, 2 side lights that are the same, and then 2 inner lights that are varied. So.
And I get that, Mr. Architect.
No.
Mr. Architect here. But what's interesting
Yes,
is the idea that how it's finished makes it all the same. So if I was looking and I was experiencing that space and I walked by it, and you would ask me, are those windows all the same? You would say yes, unless you literally stood and sized them up. So I think this is an elegant solution compared to some of the things that are brought in front of this commission.
bringing it forward.
Okay. Any other thoughts, concerns?
Any thoughts, Mr. Sewell or Mr. Skinner?
No, I'm fine with it. I think at the last meeting, last April, was one of the few who fine with that proposal, so
I have a suggestion that might be in between the two points that we've discussed here, and that is if we were to recess that center panel and maybe not split it, but have a larger picture window in the middle, you would have more of a Chicago style setup than 4 panels that are unequally sized, right?
Yeah, now see, I think that's even worse.
yeah, I was gonna say,
I would agree, because I think it starts.
You did that to force us, didn't you?
we were ready to cap.
We were ready to
came up with this
that.
grand.
We had all this extra time because the last case didn't show up.
I think it competes with the Senate, and it causes them to call too much. It's
Yeah.
gonna be-
I think it would cause more
Yeah.
going on.
I agree. Okay.
That was a good decoy, David, too.
Yeah, my only, I know we had I think we had some commentary that came in about the just overall elevation of the building and symmetry that really isn't there any way you look at it along that storefront. You don't experience it that way, never. So I don't mind a little bit of variation as we march along, assuming it's, in tune with material portion. Seems to be achieved here.
So, does someone want to make a motion?
Make a motion.
You ready?
Motion for VV 22 03 008 615 North High Street as proposed.
Second.
Any discussion as it relates to some of the recommendations that were just offered, right? So there was a series of suggestions in terms of pushing it back, setting it back, et cetera. I just want to make sure that dialogue doesn't get lost. And
Yeah.
not-
So I think we all agree is going back to reveal that was not the plane would be our solution.
So
Go ahead. And then is there any thought, just given the history related to these storefronts, that we want to, these are new storefronts. Do we want to say anything related to that has any influence on the suggested alteration?
And keep in mind, we will be losing that tile too.
Right. You know what I mean? So I'm just trying to keep us from.
Oh, no, I'm with you, and I believe that's one of the main factors
Yes.
in why you're able to do that here.
That's why I want to bring that up. I want to bring that up to the surface and part that, make that part of the motion from that perspective. Consideration of that, consideration of the tile, all of that related to that, because those are characteristics that we wouldn't want to lose. But I think it's a little bit different now, the understanding that we've lost them. This is replication, so we want to bring that back up to, it's settled.
So I do want to note in rereading my staff report that I do have it noted that the doorway and tile flooring are historic. Now, I was not the staff person here during that time, and I did talk to James Goodman, who was staffing, so I do not know off the top of my head if that tile was historic.
It was discussed in our meeting last year, this body.
Yeah, it's-
Confirmed by somebody who sat, I believe, on this commission back when it was done.
yeah, the previous past.
Yeah, it was
Chair.
Chauncey, I believe.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's on the record from the
Yeah.
informal meeting that they are photos of the original.
Okay. Maybe just at least add that.
Okay, so I don't,
So I'm going to be asking for the reasons, just so that we have it on record. So if somebody else comes back saying that, you know, we did it for here, we have it documented why we did it for the specific reason.
That's what I'm asking for. I'm asking us to provide that.
Thank you.
Is what I'm trying to say.
so I don't, I'm lost.
No, I'm with you, and I think we'll address it when Kimberly asks
That's
our
not,
reasoning. And
not part of the motion. The motion.
No,
is-
so we'll motion and then I'm going to come back, but just so we have that in
Right.
mind.
So my motion does need to be revised to, with the caveat that the infill window is recessed slightly to accommodate the existing conditions and reference to the former door.
Do you, Mr. Seawood, because you seconded it, right?
Right, I was just gonna second
Second,
that.
okay, I'm sorry. All right. Any further discussion? Go ahead and cast a vote. All those in favor say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Okay, so motion passed.
All right, and then the reasons for approval for this location.
That's, I need some help with that. That's what I was trying to get us. 'Cause I-
Yes, I was kind of trying to cue you guys, because sometimes if you could set the motion up, you can go kind of right into the reasoning.
Yeah.
But you're noting because it's not,
this is when we need Jack.
Yeah, we do. And,
oh,
yeah.
no, you don't, come on now.
But I think that
He
we're
would have
giving
pulled that off the
consideration.
top of his head like there's,
But we're giving considerations to the former renovation. That the storefront, the materiality, the existing conditions are not contributing. They have already been altered.
And thinking of city.
They're
code.
new. They're new.
It would equate to new construction.
That's
So
correct.
I was looking for this.
Okay.
Code.
Yeah, And following up with the city code, there is the standards for alteration that this could potentially be put back.
so we have documentation that if in fact the opportunity came to restore it to its original state.
And I will hunt down the city code for that when I do it.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Kimberly, for your help always.
Thank you, gentlemen, for yours, 'cause we can't do it without each other.
Yes, ma'am.
Or the applicants either.
Okay, so, and that was inclusive of everything, right? So,
Yes.
or do we want to, it seemed like to me that it was strong enough based upon our dialogue, that
So
is
that was-
covered A, B,
The
C.
motion was for as submitted, so that
Yes,
was.
that's correct.
The infill, the
Awning.
awning
And
and
the
the
Yes.
vinyl window details too. So it was just that caveat of
Yes,
how they're stepping back that entryway to give kind of the credit for where that storefront was.
yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
Thank you
much.
very much.
Appreciate
Appreciate
it.
it.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Have a great evening, which is what.
All right, do we want to see if Ford is here?
Yes, ma'am.
All righty, so is the applicant for number 4686 Park Street here? All righty, not seeing them here, we are going to move on to number 6, which is application VV-22-03-009. This is for 1167 Neal, and I do know the applicants are here. If you two want to come up while I'm reading off the staff report, I'll do this, they'll get you sworn in then. So the application is the application is the result of a code violation for work already completed. This application is to replace the existing front door with a poplar 6-panel wood door. The existing door is fiberglass and was replaced with approval. This would be to paint the front door the hot brown. Removal of the original transom over door and the previous wood door. The wood door was replaced with that 6-panel fiberglass. See, this is why we need business meetings, because I catch all of my awful typos. So the applicant is requesting to replace with that wood door that I previously mentioned, and the door frame now includes a rope detail, and there is a dental detail between the door and the transom. And the application also includes the removal of the box gutters and the installation of the K-style or OG gutters. The box gutters had previously been approved for repair. All right, and some background on this one. HPO staff had worked with the owner to approve numerous repairs in May of 2021. This was a COA number VB-21-06-015, and it was issued on May 10th of 2021. HPO staff does consider the door area and the gutters to be character defining features of the house that should be repaired and replaced in like kind per City Code 3116.11, these standards for alteration. And I've broken this down into the different aspects because there's a lot going on. So with the door and transom, as noted in the COA, the door and transom was supposed to be applied for on a separate COA as the staff was requiring the front door to be wood and that the transom should be retained. As seen in the materials, the door transom and the door frame have been replaced. The BBC guidelines recommend either a 4, 6, or 3/4 slate door as appropriate, which I've added the clipping from the guidelines below. But since this is on Infill Avenue, I need the commission to answer, are those doors appropriate or would a half-light door be more appropriate? With the gutters, the COA for repairs had approved the box gutters for repair or replacement in like kind. Due to severe deterioration of the gutters and the wood roof elements, the owner made the decision without HPO staff knowledge to remove the gutters and to replace them with the K-style. Now, the commission should consider that if this is approved, what type of precedence this would set. The current K-style gutters are not installed properly. They extend the edge of the roof by a couple of inches in a few places, which you can see in the photo that is up here. The applicant has submitted houses on Neal Avenue that do have K-style gutters on them. The addresses weren't provided, so I have not checked to see if the gutters were original to the house, approved replacement, or if there are code violations in themselves. And I do want to note, I have been calling them box gutters, but they are actually stop gutters. This was discovered upon doing the staff report. So they're slightly different in how they're up there on the roof, but regardless, the gutters were previously approved for repair and not replacement of a different kind. Now, in looking at the application much more closely, I did discover some additional items which are not part of the application, but should also be discussed. Now, these would also be fall under code violations. So the house roof and porch entablature have been stripped of its details. They are now flat. If you go to a picture of their front, I think I'm
so
things side by side, and I would not.
but one of the things that we need to do is this isn't loading these pictures, so we can't even look as we're going along.
Thank you.
So it'd be nice if we could just run through the pictures really quickly, if you don't mind, because I'm trying to look and it's nothing's happening.
Here, I'll finish my staff report, then I'm gonna come over and grab I'm gonna grab the extra tablet, because maybe that download worked properly, and maybe something funny is happening.
What he
I'm
said is
having some issues too.
Okay.
I mean, the internet on this side of the room is working fabulously.
that's because you're there.
So Kimberly,
We know why you said it.
so Kimberly's gonna finish first, and then what
Okay.
we'll do is we'll utilize the screen if possible to kind of go through, if we need to, go through each one of those to kind of have
Yes.
clarification as a supplemental. So go ahead.
Yes, well, I would suggest I'll finish with sort of the applicants and get
Perfect.
their additional comments. And then I can go through and, between me and the applicant, we can fill in some places.
Perfect.
But
No
keep
problem.
letting me know about the photos. It's also kind of nice to know it's not just that laptop that's using it's multiple things. All right, back to the staff report. So that entablature is instructed detail. The turret no longer has its flared drip edge. All of the fish scale siding has been replaced with the non-original detail. It's more of a scaled design, and the wood detail around the second story windows have been removed. A third floor half round window was put in without approval. I will note that half round window up there had been a wood before, so just it wasn't like this was replacing a window with a window. This was replacing a piece of wood with a piece of glass. So the exterior window trim painting was only for the Sherwin-Williams croissant, not a red or green. HBO does require the paint chips prior to painting approval, and the COA noted that any changes in the color, the paint color needed to be brought back to HBO for review. I did receive the updated paint chips, which I believe are towards the end of this packet, just as a note that they were acquired. The window trim has also been replaced, and all of these features are considered character defining and should be repaired and replaced like for the issued COA. Staff recommends continuing the application to allow the applicant time to work on plan to mitigate gutter repairs and replacing lost historic detail. HBO staff can conduct a site visit if the commission finds necessary. And I will note, Christy and I have been in contact with each other, kind of going back, and she has been really great about providing additional photos if I had asked them of her. A basis for staff recommendation is City Code 3116.11 standards for alteration, specifically 1, 2, 5, 6, and 12, and Victorian Village guidelines, the general rules, including the Victorian Village guidelines on siding and the awning and canopies, the gutters and the downspouts. And back to you, Sean, so we can get our applicant sorted in.
Perfect. Could you state your name for the record?
Christy Thorpe.
Yes, sir.
David Thorpe.
Do you both agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so give you a chance to go ahead and if you want to add anything to the presentation in terms of the scope. And then what we'll do is we'll kind of pan through some of the images, and I'm presuming that there may be some questions on this side. So there may be a little bit of back and forth a little bit differently because of trying to help us understand some of the images. So a little different cadence because of that, but I just wanted to kind of reference that so we don't get out of hand regarding it. But so anything you want to add?
Not quite sure where you would want to start. I guess if you had questions, then I would be able to answer them as to why I chose to do certain things a certain way.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if that make it easier.
Maybe it's beneficial for us to, so what I heard is, and I tried to write them down. So we had a door transom condition. We had a series of, removal of stop gutters to standard K-style gutters. The turret, there was a siding condition, as well as a window condition or trim. And I think it also had to do with the turret's flare, at the bottom of where it connect where that upper third story drops to the second floor. The kind of skirt flare that it typically has. The paint has been probably addressed because of that application, possibly. And then there was a thought about some window trim conditions, and I wasn't really sure about that, but that was probably in the tour as well, presumably. So, because it's the wood condition.
And I will note the applicant has requested if we can break anything off for approval, so I can issue COAs. She would like that. I'm okay doing that, especially if it's something for like paint, because that has been supplied.
Perfect. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So about 5 or 6 items that are kind of identified. Do we want to take?
I want to see the 33 pictures because I can't.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And I can't get them to load on the extra Kindle either, so it's not just you, gentlemen.
I wouldn't bring this problem up. Was it a problem?
No, this is good, Jack. We completely appreciate it. So do we start at the top and just run through and then?
Yes.
Do you want me to kind of get up and explain some?
Perfect. That would be helpful. Thank you so much, Kimberly. And then homeowner, if you feel like there's, something that you want to add or
Jump in
contribute to that particular item when that item's on the screen, please offer that dialogue for clarity.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, I just more or less explanation as to what each.
Yes.
what led to
Perfect.
each.
That's perfect. And now we'll have a visual. So thank you.
Kimberly, before we jump in, just a quick question. When did all of this work occur?
I'm gonna have to default to the homeowner. I want to say it may have been.
Started around June, the exterior June, we started working on it.
I was gonna say over the summer of 2021.
So all of this work has occurred over the past 6 months?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah.
Or
6
since,
to 9.
that's around June.
and none of this was submitted or approved by any governmental authority?
So parts of it were, there was a COA issued, but what was done doesn't quite match the COA. And a couple things were done without approval there. I think there was some confusion with what could be done and what couldn't.
Okay,
A lot of it came out of starting to do something, which Kimberly and I talked about and put in the application. And then when we started doing it, realized there were bigger issues or differences or things weren't with the gutters, for example, until they actually brought the lift on site. We had only been able to view it from the ground. Once we got up there in the lift is when we found out that there really wasn't any gutters, making it understandable why I had such a water issue in the basement. And with my neighbor is there were just waterfalls because it was basically the shell. There was no galvanized metal. We ran across a lot of materials like linoleum flooring that they had fashioned in there over time, garbage bags, tarp material. So once we got up there and we were actually able to see it is when we realized there were no gutters within the, what I call, the box. So, and then from there, we discovered, my roofing company discovered, due to the fact that that had been going on for quite some time and it hadn't been reconstructed and or repaired the way it was supposed to, I ended up having to work with Kimberly again and applying to have a new roof put on because numerous deck boards around the perimeter were basically gone. It was just wet, rotted material. And it had, when you see some of these other pictures, you'll get to see once we got up there and started opening things up, what we found or what we didn't find.
Okay.
So, oh, and then that's where I'm more than happy to admit I made the mistake. It's in the very beginning and working with Kimberly, I was also, instructed to really pay attention to the handbook, read through it, understand that. And so I went back looking at the handbook and the 4 different types of gutters that were listed as appropriate. And then viewing the different homes between 3rd and 4th Street, seeing those is it the K-style? Unfortunately, I made the assumption, okay, it says to repair or replace, and if there wasn't anything there to repair or to replace, I then had to put the new roof on, new deck boards, and then decided, okay, I should be able to go ahead and do the K-style gutter. The step, based on the manual, the step I missed was I didn't come back to Kimberly.
okay. My last question for you, and then I can pass it to Kimberly. When did you purchase this home?
Back in, I think it was May of 20.
Sounds about right. Not quite 2 years.
Okay, so purchased it in May of 20, had a home inspection, reconstructed it in July of 21.
Yes, sir.
All right. That's all I have.
Thank you so much.
So the first couple photos are just showing that the UK style gutters that have been put on. And then in this one, you can see that they overshoot a little bit. And then it previously had the, I believe, the rounded downspouts, and then it's been switched out to square ones. Step on 6. So this is mid-renovation courtesy of Google Street View. And then this is what the turret looks like beforehand. So you can see that there's that kind of skirted feature at the top here, and what the detail of the fish scale siding was like. And if you can take note of what the window trim looks like as well, because that was switched out. And then these are some pictures of the old gutters of what the state of that was. You can see that there's been some creative repairs with the foam in here. There's another product that the homeowner.
That's a very good picture and example of once we got up there and removed things that had been tacked up is what we found. I'm hoping he bought stock in the grape foam company because he used quite a bit of it all around the side of that house.
And then these are the old gutters. And then the full gutters again, and I know there's a picture in here that does show one of the stop gutters. It just makes it kind of previous conditions of how everything was routed out here.
That just shows a very large section where there's just no gutter at all. It just had fallen off over the years.
Yeah, and then here, you can kind of see a previous part of the gutter. And where the, what the downspout used to look like. And then these are more of the state of when they got up there. Look at things again with the spray foam. And then I believe this is the only.
That is the only section of galvanized metal that we.
And then the next few photos are underneath the roof. So this is a lot of water damage. It's quite extensive. The gutters clearly haven't been maintained in a number of years.
So I just think all of those pictures just kind of show why Christie got to the place of they weren't able to be repaired. There was so much damage that repair really wasn't an option.
So, and then,
Well, so that's where the word replace comes in, and not meaning replace with K gutters, replace with the original. And this is the thing that upsets me and brings me down, is because we have new applicants that have been in a 3-year process to get something approved on Neal Avenue in your neighborhood. And then we have something like this, where we have true details and they've been lost. And part of it is I think your realtor should have told you what you were buying and what you were getting into. And I think the second thing is the contractor you worked with should have alerted you also, or did they just do what they always do? And I think that's an issue that we're going to deal with in this conversation, quite frankly.
Go ahead, continue, Kimberly.
all right, and this is we'll go back to 23. This is a side-by-side of some of the details. So just kind of pointing out what things looked like before, and you can see in this photo that that is probably that's a stop gutter up there. And just judging by some of the previous photos of how things have rotted, it did look like they were box gutter, but a little thing up there is a stop. And then you can see, the entablatures have a little bit more detail. And
So can we zoom in on those? Okay.
So keep in mind the picture, again, courtesy of Google Earth. Windows are, that was some of my questioning when I was looking through this. Are the windows different? Or the windows are just open, which you don't typically see in photos. And then these next few are the neighboring houses with the K-style gutters.
Can we just go back to the column detail? Or,
Zoom in.
yeah. Okay, and then can we go back to the original? I mean, that's the original. Can we go back to what they did? Okay.
Do you need to do any more comparing and contrasting on these ones?
Now let's go over to the original just one more time. And we don't have the what was the bottom treatment on the original? Was it a full column or was it boxed? Do you have a picture of that?
It's sat on, I guess, a box is that,
Okay.
and so they're still sitting on that.
I don't remember if we have any photos of the full front. In here,
That's interesting.
In that picture, it's all the same color, so it's hard to see towards the bottom, but the column comes down about 2/3 the way, and then it sits on, I think it's about a 2 foot.
Okay. Okay, keep going.
next few ones are the neighboring houses with K-style gutters.
Here's a good example. What we strive for.
And this is what the front door currently looks like. And then the next one is a before and after. So this is what the door looks like before. The transom is covered up with a screen, the exterior, but this is what it looks like now.
And there, when it came to the transom, there was no transom. I mean, there was some split pieces of wood. They put the storm glass or storm window over it, and then it was again like that third floor arch window. It was just a piece of board that they put in there and painted.
So what are we in the new one that's now? What is that condition there? How's that completed?
It's a completely new frame.
Okay.
Because if you can see from the lintel, like the original, the original kind of window with the brick was factoring at. I will note this was previously cracked, so that's an existing condition.
I did go back to the gentleman that I worked with at Dublin Millworks. And besides the 6-panel door, he has also, I gave him the original pictures and he was able to design, and they can reconstruct the half-light door as well. It won't have the sculpting on it, but I think that's something I can have added in. And you'll notice underneath the window there on the door, there's kind of like the dental molding. But he said he could add that in as well. So I would have two options for that door, either the 6-panel or the half-light.
We've got one more, and these are the paint chips which she provided.
Okay, good.
All right, should I stay standing or fix it? I don't know, how do you get back up?
You're totally good to say. All right, so that's very helpful. Thank you. All right, so let's see here. I'm just gonna run down the list and I might jump around. So I know there's 5 items. Okay, so the 5 items I'm gonna say is just subject matters or door transom. We got gutters. That may be a situation where we talk about gutters porch, gutters home, just kind of teeing something up there. Talk about the turret, and turret is going to be siding, it's going to be window trim, and it's going to be skirt, which is that skirt detail. Okay. Paint, and then the last one is, before I had window trim, but now I think it's, I kind of have a better understanding. It's part of the touring now, you know what I mean, from that perspective. So I got those 4 items.
What about the half round window?
At
Very top.
Thank you, sir. Perfect. So half round window. Okay, so we're back to 5 items. The one thing just a suggestion, and I don't know if this is necessarily is trying to understand how we talk about the house, but we also talk about the porch. And, you know what I mean? So that's just, in the grand scheme of things too, I think we need to kind of think about both of those related items as it relates to those 5 pillars, okay? So let's go to, I'm gonna leave gutters out of it for a second. Let's go to just paint. Let's get that one out the way. Paint, colors that have been provided, is there any concerns with anything related to paint?
No.
Awesome. Any, Mr. Seaboard? Okay, perfect. So paint's off the chart now, so next one is the half round window.
Don't have a problem with it.
So the half round window being replaced, or
I think it's fine.
Do we need any additional details? Is it okay as provided?
No, I think it's fine. It's good.
When I took the board off, when I was able to take it off, found that the actual trim, the encasement for the window was probably one of the few areas on the entire house where it wasn't rotted. So all I had to do was just sand it and clean it up, and then we positioned the glass right back where it
Yep.
would have been had
I think
it
it's
worked up in there.
awesome. Perfect. Thank you. So I was trying to get the low hanging fruit out the way, guys. I'm sorry. Thank you, man. So that's the half round window. That's the paint. The next one is, let's talk about the door transom. So the door and the transom condition. Thank you, Nolan, for jumping around too as well. I apologize, buddy. So door transom. So the door has been replaced. I think Kimberly has offered 3 in her snips. She had 3 kind of conditions. Obviously, a half light door was there. The 3 doors that are, so, and the transom condition. So we want to talk about this a little bit. But typically, if this would have been an assembly, it would have been, if we needed to replace this would have been a true transom light. And then that transom light would have stepped down to a door assembly. To me, it seems like there's probably a series of components that are being put together to try to replicate a transom condition. Just, I don't know if it's being exaggerated about the paint approach, but just can we just talk it through?
So I think what's interesting about this is where I think your contractor or whoever did this gave you some really bad advice. And they did what they could do versus what they should have done. So for example, if we look at that transom, that's a typical window replacement where the profile and dimension has taken up so much space that the true glass has been reduced. So it used to be this big, now it's this big, and I see this much paint versus this much paint.
Oh, okay, because there is that, the brown around there is a trim piece that he put in.
That's
So
what
that
I,
could be
that's,
removed, okay.
that's
could
what
be
I'm saying.
removed, and the
So-
glass would become bigger.
That's correct.
this is the non sequitur. The door has to be addressed, so wood, back up to a highlight, carved, all of it, and the original dimensions of that transom have to become. So I want to see a beautiful door and a beautiful transom, not 2 things put together.
Okay. When you refer to the carving, am I supposed to try to,
Yes, I think you should take those details and see what they can come up with. Because that really is like filigree that's been attached. I don't think it's really carved.
no, it's, it was missing in certain places, so it was like
Or-
it was attached to the surface.
Or I'm open to suggestions on what could be done.
Would a 3/4 light door be problematic instead of a half light?
I mean, that would be fine too, with just a panel on the bottom.
Yeah.
So can you work with her to have those examples?
And I'm sorry, I'm just taking some notes. So what are the examples that you would like to see?
So as Sean said, so reproduce with the filigree.
Yeah.
Or do a 3/4 door. And then the bottom panel has just a detail.
Right. And the only reason I suggest that is it may be easier for them to achieve.
Yep,
That's
absolutely.
okay. And Kimberly, I'm
So Christy's pretty familiar with the guidelines because she's run through them, so.
Okay,
So I mean, I think that,
Not
But if you might remember the section on doors that
Yes.
have the different panels, we have the ones with the.
Yeah.
the-
I think that's-
Yeah, I had talked to him about that
Yeah.
too, and I said, let's just go with the half light, but he can do the 2/4 lights
Yeah.
as well.
perfect.
agreed, okay, moving on.
All right, so we understand what needs to happen with the door and the trails. Perfect, thank you. All right, let's do the turret. Let's do the turret, if you don't mind. So the turret, there was three components. The siding, the window trim, and the skirt detailing. And I think all three of those components all kind of work hand in hand with one another.
I have gone back and discussed this with the trim carpenter. And just above the windows, you'll see the various trims. And he says that that is no problem to add it in. Then I spoke with the roofing company about what was left of the so-called drip edge that went right around the bottom, just below the scallops. And he said he could put it back in, but they don't install those anymore because it doesn't do what it was supposed to have originally
We see
done
the
in the
new
beginning.
condition.
So he said it doesn't really make a difference.
So is the flare,
It just kind of, it was like they took the bottom row of the scallops and kind of bent them out a little bit.
Pull it up.
Yeah.
Can't
And
see.
then you had the various levels of trim underneath that, which can be put back up.
Yeah, zoom in, I'm sorry,
So
wrong
the
language.
flare right now is not present.
It's just straight.
It's
Yeah,
straight.
they made it
That's-
straight.
I think that's the proportion piece that's missing, right? You know what I mean? Just goes,
So not just the flare, but the trim.
that's correct. Yeah, you got
Associated with
white.
So, can we go back to the old one real quick? Just, I'd like a eye doctor. Okay,
Yes.
so, and then go back to the new one.
And you'll see
Because I
that,
think, I think, I'm not crazy about having to recreate the skirt, but I am crazy about something has to wrap around that
Yes.
to talk about it. So what do you think?
Amen. I think the proportion of that band is important as it relates to the amount of space
Yeah.
of the head of the window on the second floor to the sides of the windows on the third floor.
Yes.
So I think being able to echo that band in a series of build out, not necessarily one band, it's a series of built up
Mhm.
that equals the
He
band.
said it was
width.
3-tiered and
That's correct.
well, it was like molding that sat on top of each piece as it went up.
So then, once I establish that, what about the scallops under it that are below it? I think they need to be, they shouldn't be there.
It should be there. It should go back to being panelized, almost like a panelized approach like you saw.
So basically what we're saying is we build up, take that datum across,
Mhm.
what's left becomes panelized, and I think it would be okay.
Because you would break that.
Do you understand that?
I'm sorry, not really.
So basically what we're talking about is you recreate this datum that wraps around here,
Yes, sir.
okay? So if that takes us down to here,
So you
this scallop piece
want that.
below needs to be panelized.
So
like
to
this.
have it
So you
flat.
can't, like a skirt, nothing can be under this part.
Okay.
It has to talk about the bottom.
Stay there, Jeff. Nolan, can you go ahead and advance?
So you're
the
basically
previous-
referring to taking that bottom
There you
row
go.
off,
So
because those
now-
were individual.
So you see how this
Yes.
condition,
Yes,
again, it's not. So what we're gonna do is build that up
Back.
and then the paneling below that will talk to that piece.
okay,
Does that make sense?
yeah,
It's going back to the existing minus the flare.
right. So they just kind of added an extra row of skirting that didn't need to.
And in
Yeah.
order to get that flare, right, so you're gonna, if you think about just kind of from a color, that strong datum, that is kind of the dark line where the build out stops and the flare starts, that shadow line there. So what's gonna happen, he or she is gonna build out these series of planes, and then they're gonna get, that plane is gonna be outboard of the siding above.
So I'd like sketches or something to be shown
Yes.
because
Yes, sir.
I don't want it to go left to center again.
Right.
Do you want them scaled and measured, or can they just be more freehand?
I don't know, because you remember the last one we went through where we wanted any
Yes.
kind of detail and it was like pulling teeth?
Yes.
I'm not gonna go through that
So
exercise.
that's why I'm asking if you
Okay,
want the scale.
so
Understand.
Sean, you explain what we want.
So what's gonna happen is, since that's outboard of the siding above, what they're gonna have to do is put a piece of flashing that is canted, right? That flashing is gonna be behind the siding, and then it's gonna cant out a little bit, and then it's gonna kind of basically mitigate those two, right? Because one's outboard, one's back here, this piece of siding is gonna go. Now, what's gonna happen is, if they were to kick that on a slope, it could create a little bit of shadow, and it could almost replicate the skirt
Okay.
to some degree, right? So I think what we would want to do is, if you think about that detail, if I took a section cut through that, like if I took a vertical knife, right, through one of those, through that plane, we want to understand, what is that build up? What is that piece of flashing to return back in a little drawing that would allow us to look at it, understand, and be able to balance that proportion alongside of the carpenter.
So what we would just need is where you see the bubble.
Yep.
We would need an elevation to show and then a section through,
Yes,
and
sir.
we'd be good to go.
Yes, sir. And
Okay.
it could be by hand. It doesn't have to be formal drawing. It could, just enough to
I
communicate.
won't.
And that's fair.
And you can always get whoever your contractor is to do
Yeah.
it for you, because they,
They should be able to produce that.
yes.
They're accustomed to reading that information. They should be accustomed to at least, doing it. I just don't want them to think that they need to go find a professional to draw this for them. They
Okay.
should be able to give you a sketch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, so go ahead. Yes, sir.
Well, just one more piece
Yes, sir.
on this, the windows, right?
Yes.
Go trim.
So the window trim condition that is shown here and the stool or sill, if the sill is a little bit slightly projected,
Can we zoom in on that?
So instead of the 4 flat pieces, then there's like another piece in front of that to make that sill.
There's a little.
Not this,
So
no, I'm
the one
talking
above.
the bubble, yeah. So,
this is a tour window.
okay, now let's look at the new one.
There we go. And then slide over to the new one.
Okay, now
Is
zoom.
it the same width? I just lost that bottom.
Looks like the
And the
dimension
color.
of the flat board, well, obviously the color is enhancing it, but it looks like the dimension of the flat board is consistent on all 4 sides.
Yeah, so I think that the bottom has to be reworked to read. So it has some
Bring that
depth.
out? on the
Yes.
Bottom out, okay.
So again, if he could do a little hand sketch of what he's gonna do with that, I think we'll be okay.
Would you like me to go back to the all solid color?
No, it's just a matter of the detail. I think the color's fine. It's just the detail, because what happens is that reads as a frame, all equal, instead of a base plane with trim around it.
Okay.
That's wrong.
Very, very helpful, very helpful. All right, so
Okay,
the last one that we want to talk about is gutters. So gutters, and I want to kind of break this down if possible to talk about, I think the easiest one to talk about maybe first is maybe the home. Let's talk about the upper home portion of the gutters in the existing downspouts. So I'm sorry, I should say existing stop gutters and downspouts. So can we talk about that one a little bit?
actually, can we talk about the porch first, since we're talking about the turret?
Yes, sir.
This is where you put a line in the sand. The turret, the porch, the door has to read correctly.
Yeah.
So what I would like to see is on this porch, the stop gutter back to its original condition. It's only a matter of getting that to read like the old.
So
And then the upper gutters,
that's
well, just let me
No.
just talk about the big idea.
perfect, awesome. Awesome.
Big idea on the top is I hate to see those things go, but they're gone. And the idea of replacing those is minimal. So what I would say is the gutters that are up there are fine, but how they're connected So if there's OG connecting those, I want to see the original round ridge coming down.
Oh, you mean
So that's
corrugated
the
downspouts.
whole, that's how we're trying to mitigate
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
this.
gotcha.
So the upper, where there is, we want to see the round come down. And then the porch, I want to see back to where it was.
They did, it is
So it's
like
meticulous.
a box cut. It's not the aluminum that's on the porch.
So the new.
But he didn't style it correctly? Is that what you're stating?
Gotcha.
So see, I don't know, I'm not reading what that condition is.
So let's just say, for instance.
Please zoom in on.
How does if I'm looking at the porch now, is the porch intended to have a gutter applied to it in a very similar fashion?
He
as up above?
built it like it was a box
Got
and
it.
lined it, so it is a
It's a
gutter.
gutter, but it's just.
Yes,
by the
it runs.
So is it just missing, let's just say, for instance, the appropriate.
Well, let's just zoom in on that corner profile. Okay, let's just look at this. So, okay, now let's go over to what was original. And I just need to see that same edge. Now keep going up, okay. Now zoom in on that. Okay, now, Sean, do you understand that I can't differentiate what that difference is?
So what happens is, go ahead.
I'm just drawing.
Okay, you're drawing, okay.
You're
I just want to be sure.
So,
So what happens is that stop gutter is built up on top of the slope of the roof, okay? So if I'm here, so this is the roof plane.
oh, so right above that, that's the gutter,
So that's right. So this stop gutter is a border that's
It
laid
just-
like this.
right?
And then it's finished with a piece of crown.
Yep,
And then that piece of flashing goes on top.
yep.
And then gets back. Okay, so now what happens? We've lost this. And then this dimension has grown.
Okay, so then now let's go, stay there, now let's go to the new one.
Yeah.
Okay, so do the same thing, Sean.
So this notion or this piece here is higher
It's become a dental instead of reading as a,
as two planes. So like,
Correct.
so the first one, if I was to continue this roof plane, this overall dimension, instead of it being, it should say plus minus 10, 12
Yeah.
inches.
my roof would poke through there.
Right, that would have been a lot less, right?
Okay.
And then that would have had that
Ridge.
phantom of the
Yeah.
crown molding. Then there would have been another piece of crown molding that would have been a stop gutter that would have been stepped back.
Yeah.
You see me?
Yeah.
So now what happens is this one is just kind of built up as a dam. Right, the stop gutter's been applied to the front fascia.
Yeah.
That's what's been done. So I think what we need to kind of understand if there's a possibility of being able to break the scale of this down.
Yep.
To be able to get some of the, undulation associated with the crown.
So, and so what I'm gonna say about this is that detail has to be brought out and it's a relative small amount lineage feet
Trim.
that have to be corrected. But I think if we get that,
Yeah, I agree.
I will be very satisfied.
Makes sense. Mr. Seaver, you understand?
Oh, I thought, yeah.
I want to be sure. man.
No.
I just want to be sure, guys. I just wanna be sure.
And can you go back to the original just one more time? And
Okay,
we just want to make sure we understand what you're asking.
So. I
this
think-
is another sketch and drawing in section.
Mhm.
You
Okay.
get that?
And we'll.
So
and I
that we
think
can
every
add,
time
instead
there's-
of it being that large flat
Yeah.
section, we
Yeah.
want to add in.
Yeah,
more
try to
detail.
understand that. And I think the interesting thing is the stop gutter, the front fascia is that plane, which is right now what he has. And then that plane just extends all the way up to create the gutter.
Because 1167 and the corner condition is the same.
That is correct.
It's
Yes.
just above, so again, where
That's correct.
that piece is what needs to be rethought.
Just a sketch through here. So you get that in elevation a little bit, and then we'll get a section cut through there and try to
As to
understand.
what to put up there.
Yep,
It'd be great to try to break the profile of that up with some of this that is being represented before. That I think.
And again, I'm in no way a construction guy, so I'm going to ask a really stupid question. when I look at it, it looks like just some additional moldings to create some depth needs to be added to what's,
Well,
There.
this is where the profile is gonna be so important, because that edge, believe it or not,
So,
this is talking about a profile. So this thing, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle.
Yeah.
That thing is the roof penetrating, so that's gonna come out a good. And then you're gonna have trim pieces under this to bring it back to this plane. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different planes in verticality that I'm gonna have to deal with. And they can't be like an inch, an inch, an inch, an inch.
so with that, the flare on that, is that similar to the turret where with that wedge coming out, we do the?
No, this condition is totally different, and this is why we're asking for the elevation and the section.
But I think with the existing drawings, and again, I'm presuming this is a carpenter that you've been talking through. They should be able to supplement the conversation that we're having now alongside
Yeah.
with you to produce something that comes back to us. The last thing we want to do is, have you, only you, we want to work with you and be supportive of what your next step is. And if we need to bridge any conversation with the carpenter, that the sketch will be it.
Well-
That will be the vehicle. So then you will know and you will see it.
I would say if he doesn't understand what we've talked about, I might run. Because this guy looks like he's very vertical and he doesn't understand depth and finish. So he does what he knows what he does.
I'm a little bit more positive.
So call me Danny Downer, everyone does, but I don't care. This is really important.
It is
that
important.
It gets brought out.
It is important. It is very important. Perfect. All right, so we got the porch. We got the porch with the detail on the porch. The base condition of the porch. So it doesn't look like the capital of the column. It looks like it was just paint is different on the new columns to the existing.
The
Is
only
that
thing
true?
they didn't add or put back on there was the small ring that's around there.
Go back.
That, I think that's what I noticed that was
The
missing.
one that's probably about 6 inches from 5 or 6
It
inches
drops
from.
down
That
and
makes
then
sense.
looks like it was.
So that I think is important because of the overall height of the column. Those kind of things start to
Yeah.
help the proportion.
And break down the proportion.
Yeah. And how do we look at where the column meets the base? Like, so it doesn't look like the bottom base of the column is finished as it sits on the 2-foot box, right?
The way it was originally, it looked like the column went right down inside the box. It sits right on top of that wood.
Do we, we should have better details of this house in our files, do we? Has anyone looked?
I have looked, but the file's not too thick. So this kind of probably speaks to a lot of what the previous homeowner was doing with the do-it-yourself repairs.
So what happens is this is green, that's maroon. So this is green, this is 2 pieces. There's a flat piece that's here. There's the first piece that's kind of, articulated as a kind of a sculpted circle or a fluted kind of piece of crown. And then there's a bubble, which is the piece that's maroon. What's piece is missing is there's a small little bubble that's missing here. That will help
It was,
that piece.
yeah, it was painted down, red down to that ring. So it's hard to see the
Okay,
ring.
so that's where this piece would be, right?
Mhm.
And then this gets echoed at the bottom right here. And that's what's missing.
Yeah.
You see what I
I
mean?
would- Yeah,
You know,
you're
You
right.
want the top piece down at the bottom.
So if you take a look at this and you take a look at another home that this column sits on, or if this was the porch, this column would have a very similar, slightly larger proportion to what's replicated up top,
At the bottom.
down at the bottom.
And see, I'll try to go back and find other pictures.
That's what's
But
missing.
I don't remember anything being there when I purchased the house. It was simply the column with the flat wood base.
Sean, we've got photos from the listing.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at now, yeah.
Can you see it, Thomas?
Yeah.
It's just, so you think about it is, like to Jeff's point, is a lot of these details have been, a vertical and horizontal, right? Vertical, horizontal. But when you kind of go back and you study what's, the neighborhood, those transitions were so, there was a soft elegance or just a sensitivity to the transition. And most of the time, the transition was done with a piece of profile wood or something of that
Right.
nature. So that's the character. And so once you kind of start to strip it back, then that's what you end up getting. So we're trying to get the character and the proportion back. So that's what that's why we're
Yeah.
paying attention to those things.
So yeah, you really have to take these pictures and look at that. And take a look at that, Sean,
Okay.
because of the detail.
Okay.
Can you send me that?
Google your address, it's all.
Okay. So now, the last item, I think we know of the porch. There's gonna be a series of details that you're gonna provide, right? Little simple section cuts and details of these little moments. One is gonna be the top fascia / gutter of the porch. And then if you want some assistance on evaluating how the column meets the base and those things, is something that they need to point out.
Yeah.
To be beneficial. Do we want to move to the home now? Have we done enough with the?
Yeah.
The gutters and the
Yes.
home.
That's the only thing that's left.
So I think, again, just to really, the porch, its finish is rough, it's not refined. And that's what we're looking for, is refined and true to detail. Okay?
Perfect. So we're gonna move to the balance of the home. So stop gutters have been removed, water damage, extreme water damage, and the resultant is the K-style gutter that's been applied. K-style gutter, two things is, I think that to Kimberly's point, was the projection associated with them. The other thing that was a little challenging for me is the size of K-style gutter that was used. So there's a loss of the fascia. So typically, if you look at some of those homes, the K-style gutters are slightly smaller than the depth of the fascia. So the fascia may be 8 inches, and then the K-style gutter is like 5. So you get a little understanding of the vertical profile. Right now, the K-style gutter is the entire size or depth of the fascia. Are you guys seeing where
I'm not. I know you're getting the detail of,
So right now, what happens is this fascia, the vertical plane of this fascia, is not.
it should be up, it should be up an inch.
Because
Okay.
what's gonna happen is this guy is sloped. So I haven't looked at this home in totality, but if this guy is sloped and we're already covering the fascia,
Yeah,
there may be areas where this guy drops down below the fascia.
right, so there's
I don't know
no,
if that happens.
there's no shadow line.
None,
Okay,
right?
so how do you fix that?
I don't know. I don't know if that exists. I don't know if that exists. That's not a big deal. The only thing I can think of is, I just don't know if that exists. If it doesn't exist, then it's
I would
fine.
have to have the roofing company, the gentleman come back out,
Okay.
the project manager. And it's, sometimes it made it very difficult until you were actually up in the lift being 3 stories to actually see a lot of the detailed stuff from the ground. And
I just don't think you just don't want the mounting of this guy to fall below this line, which is that bottom of fascia.
Mhm.
You understand what I'm saying?
I don't want to say it's even, but
That's
Yeah.
good. If it stays even, that's okay. But if you could get the shadow, that'd be even better. But
Yes,
And then the last item I think is the projection that was Kimberly had pointed out at the end runs.
it needs to be chopped off,
Yeah, where the gutter extends past.
yeah.
I think it was.
You understand that one?
it just stuck, because I had actually asked them about that. They
Yeah,
said
that's,
that was the way they had to do
that's
it.
bad,
Yeah, this
right up there,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, painful.
So you
Oh,
want
I
those
see.
2 front corners, you want those brought back so that they're flush with.
I can hardly look at this.
So sometimes it's really interesting and sometimes, no, I don't know. I've seen this done where this guy actually can extend to here. And, what I mean, like, I don't know, like this, if you look at this, this is all lost too as well.
Well, so I think what has to happen is they just have to put a finished piece on that, so that hurts.
I got you. I got
Do you understand that?
On the top flat part.
You guys exhausted.
I'm sorry.
Did you see this? If this was a piece of trim on my floor or anywhere else, it wouldn't be like that. It would turn a corner and it'd be flush with that,
Okay.
which speaks to those lines.
So you want them to cut that back and run the
Exactly.
gutter along the front? That
No,
entire-
no, 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 no. this thing is gonna get cut back this much, and a piece like this is gonna be turned, and it's gonna do that corner.
With an angle.
So it reads like it's wrapping, not two things coming together. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So.
And again, if they have any questions, I would call Kimberly or run from them. And I don't care whether they're your cousins or not. This is just, it's terrible.
Go ahead, Kim.
Are you sure? Commissioner Hessom, are you done?
I'm done. I'm done already. I can't wait for the next application. I'm getting warmed up.
Oh. Okay, so with the coordinates returns, they've also been flattened as well, so can they stay like they are, or does that detail need to be added back?
So she's modifying the balance of this. If you didn't, so she's thinking about this.
Yes.
I think it stays the way it is. And if they finish that corner the way they're supposed to finish that corner, it'll look correct.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yep.
If you notice, this here is the existing piece. So what's missing right now, if you look at that distance from here, the fascia was put back, but that large piece of crown that would go from this plane right here back up to here is missing. So there would be a piece of crown that would be in here. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
That piece of crown would come back, it would be here, you would see that line going back over here, and it would be a piece of crown that goes from here to here.
So what I'm saying is from, if it's not gonna be perfect,
No.
but if they turn that edge of that gutter,
Yes, sir.
no, the gutter stops right at that edge,
The gutter stops.
okay?
Yep.
And it's turned.
Gotcha.
And it dead ends right into that plane, it will read like the rest of that going across. And the only thing that you're missing is a finished piece there, which would give the profile this way, not from the front, just from the edge.
Gotcha, from the edge.
And again, that's why we need details
Okay.
and just a little sketch, because that profile has been flattened out, but I don't think the whole profile needs to be addressed. I think it's just the end gutter and then the other end.
So when they draw or when they provide some detail and try to understand this, it'd be beneficial just for them to try to understand how all that's coming
So
together.
and do you want some additional molding on the, right there?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what, because you can see how the projection is so strong.
Mhm. And it's
That
just
projection
flat.
is so strong because of, it used to have a piece of crown that went up to it.
And so the corner of that gutter, they'll cut it back, they'll do the 45 and just wrap it around, and it won't cover the full length of that.
Correct.
It'll just be 4 or 6 inches.
That's right.
And then you'll use sort of your trim pieces to match up.
Is it all right if I walk?
Absolutely. Not
Because
your,
I'm not sure. She's on the same page.
And you'll note, this is being live streamed and it looks like the audio is working. So if you want to go back at any point to the Save Columbus's YouTube page, you can go and rewatch the discussion.
Okay.
We have been having some audio issues, but it looks like things are holding
Yeah.
well.
okay,
So you're
Yes.
wanting this gutter to end right there?
yes. And that face is gonna be what you see to the south.
That
Yep,
will be right there,
Oh, okay. The
Yes.
inside.
right? And then we're going to add
what else?
mold
That,
and
so,
detail down.
so
Fine.
this piece is gonna look like a piece of this. It's not gonna be flat. This is flat, it's just cut off. This piece is gonna turn here and dead end, and it's gonna have that profile.
But it's still gonna stop at that extent though.
So it's finished woodwork. This is
Got it.
all he's doing
Got it.
is turning that corner. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Helpful, thank you.
Yes.
All right. So
So I think we've covered everything here
we've
that we can.
covered everything. And I even wrote stuff down. So yes, that was the last
Yeah.
item.
You should have put me on the end.
Holy Toledo, can you imagine if you had a piece of finished wood work that looked like that?
Sticking out.
Yeah, cut off
Downspouts,
at the side.
downspouts, is there any concern with the current square downspouts versus the round,
I think they need to replace it to round.
which is
Now, they're-
corrugated?
There are two different, there's the corrugated ones.
Yes.
And then there's the smooth round ones. So which one do you specify?
Corrugated. It's the corrugated.
It's the corrugated one, because that's what we see in the previous picture.
Because looking at various homes between third and fourth, they have both, so I didn't know,
Corrugated.
Yeah,
can you do either one?
corrugated,
or-
because that's what we've seen.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. So, I don't want to go back through it if we don't have to, but do you feel pretty comfortable?
He takes very good notes.
Okay, awesome.
I
Great.
Kim
They're
does
not
too.
taking notes
Right.
to.
Great.
And if we have questions, we'll call.
So,
Guys,
Yes. Yes, we
Yeah.
so it'll be a motion, so our next steps will be a motion to continue. We'll continue the application.
Do we want to approve any parts of it?
Oh, yes,
The
we could.
window,
We-
that have a window.
Well, I had a question about the door. We had talked about it. There's a 6 to 8 week lead time. And they're saying they won't even guarantee the 8 weeks of getting the door. It could be more like 12 from the time you order it. So that was one of the things we talked about, is if you wanted to go with the door that had the 2/3 light in it, then I can at least get the drawings to Kim. And if those are what you were discussing and wanting, then I can get it ordered. Since there's such a long lead time to get that front door in.
Okay, I'm
We're not gonna
understanding.
get to see the
Yeah.
door again.
We got you.
Right, and I defer or open it up to others as well, and I think I've held my tongue quite a bit on this. I'm actually quite disappointed in this project overall. That's the whole purpose of us having this commission and this process. And so rather than approving pieces of this, I would recommend and propose that we continue this application.
Get the details.
Get the details, you all spend time with your contractor to understand if this is who you're gonna move forward with, or if other changes need to be made. I understand some of these things, but quite a few of these changes are pretty egregious for a home that was just sold 2 years ago on Neal Avenue. Some of the photos we have looked at, I think it's pretty evident the condition of, the property when you acquired it compared to now. And so not just as the onus on your contractor, but also your realtor, whoever inspected your home, a lot of those things. And I say all of this out of respect for everyone else who's here, who's been very patient, as well as the other applicants who come and spend a year or two trying to get their application approved. And so we obviously can't afford to spend this amount of time on everybody. And as much as we've enjoyed going back and forth with you all, we appreciate your patience as well. I think it'd probably be a more prudent, useful amount of our time for you all to go back and do that due diligence before we invest additional time in piecemealing some of these things that frankly should not have occurred at all, whether it was through you all as homeowners or through your contractor. But I open it up to.
No,
thoughts and
no,
comments as well.
you couldn't have said it, you couldn't have said it better, Thomas. I mean, really.
It deserves it. It deserves it.
Yep.
So with that being the case, can we motion to, we'll basically continue. And then we'll come back with all the detail and then we'll revisit this whenever that application is available.
Perfect.
Make a motion to continue.
So I have a motion to continue VV 22-03-009.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed.
Thanks for your
Thank you
time.
so much.
Thank you.
Sorry, really appreciate it. Thank you.
I just want to let you know, the deadline for next month is St. Patrick's Day. So that is Thursday, March 17th. So you get an extra day. Typically it's a week from today. I know that is a quick turnaround. If you need more time, it will push us to May. So just as a heads up.
It'll be there.
Yeah, I don't want to rush it and have to do it a third time.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know, because you're the first continued of the night, so that's kind of what the turnaround looks for. And I'm always here for questions. It might take me a little while to summarize this, but I will get a letter out to you
Okay.
and going through, even though you took notes.
And one last recommendation for you all, if you, and I remember when your home came for sale, if you Google your address and that image that comes up, the first 4 or 5, I think that would be a good image for your contractor to look at, for both of you guys to kind of walk through and see the level of detail on all of those depictions, and you can kind of see the areas where they may have gone astray, things of that nature. So if you just Google your address and those first images that come up, I think that would be a nice, roadmap to start from.
Helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Mr. Sewell. Thank you, sir. So we were at 6, so we need to go back and get 4, and 4 is available. We skipped 4.
Yes, thank you. All right. It's just the scrolling and going back.
And hold up, first one, thank you again for being patient. That is extremely important from that perspective, and I know you know that. So just thank you so much for dealing with us as we talk through that. It's just very helpful and needed. So thank you. Okay, go ahead.
All right, is 686 Park Street here? Alrighty. So we're gonna move on to number 7, and it's gonna take me another minute of scrolling on the computer. The laptop is outdated and it is cranky, so it doesn't do half the things I want it to do, but it types, so. Number 7 is VB-22-03. This is 937 Denison Avenue. All right, this application, the applicant is asking for a recommendation to use the space as a guest in-law suite. So this looks a little bit more complicated on the agenda than it is. So the variances were requested and granted in June of 1999. These included the basis of computing, the maximum side yard required, the minimum side yard permitted, private garage, there's 2 for that, and then the minimum number of parking spaces required. The variance was granted in 1999 with 4 conditions. The conditions were there are to be no finished walls and no heating, cooling, or plumbing supply to the upstairs of the garage in order to preclude the additional height of the garage into habitable space. Storage inside the accessory structure will be limited to household items, lawn equipment, automobiles, and other equipment and materials necessary for the maintenance of the premises. The accessory structure will not be used for any business-related purposes or for any vehicle, trailer, equipment, materials, or storage of items used in the business. The applicant is to obtain and record a maintenance easement agreement with the neighboring landowners to the north and south. And just to note, there's no exterior modifications being proposed at this time. There is a little bit of confusion between what was reviewed, what was approved, and what was. This was built in 1999 or 2000, so it's been that way for a while. So when the garage construction was originally approved, the condition noted those 4 conditions. HPO staff is concerned regarding the parking in the area for making the garage habitable space. A previously recommended variance did reduce this to 3 spaces, and the residence is within the short mobile parking district. Staff is concerned that any additional visitors or residents would add to the parking shortage in the area. I did check with zoning regarding any additional requirements or parking, and they confirmed that no additional variances are needed, and no additional parking is needed. How this is set up is okay. Staff does recommend the approval of the application with any comments or clarifications made by the commission. The basis for recommendation is 3116.12, the standards for new construction, specifically B&M, and this is just for the recommendation, so they can use this space as habitable, and the only barrier with that is those previous conditions mentioned.
So, hold on. Okay, wait, let me make sure I can support it. Are you?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. No, it's perfect. Just want to be sure. Could you state your name for the record and get you sworn in?
David Maddox.
It's okay. Do you agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, sir?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add, just clarify, kind of talk through, just to give us a little bit more insight?
So we've been involved with the owners for this for 25 years or so, and they did a full ground up renovation of the house. And
stuck true to the details and did beautiful copper built-in gutters and did it the right way in every aspect of the exterior. And so when we did the garage, they wanted the character to be as close as possible to the existing house. And so they were pretty diligent about doing it, you know, building a beautiful structure. And so doing that, we got some height variances and somehow we built a 36-foot wide garage on a 38-foot lot. I'm not sure how we did that, but we got.
I remember, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, it fits the house beautifully and it's okay on the neighborhood. So they're very diligent about doing the right thing in the right way.
So I guess my question is, if nothing, why are we here?
Because of the variances that were granted, the stipulations were that it couldn't be finished the second floor. Even though the space is there, the windows are there, the stairs are there. It was concerned that they would turn it into a rental property and create a parking issue and that kind of stuff. So based on those conditions, the variances were granted. And so we're here asking to be able to finish the second floor of it. But knowing that those stipulations were in place, we have to have approval to do that.
So what has to happen for them to finish this?
So you've got to recommend that they can use this space as intended to. So we're essentially kind of appealing the conditions.
So.
And I'll probably have you list some reasons because some very specific conditions were put into place and, you know, almost 25 years later, we're saying it's okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess we have to figure out what we have to do to allow them to build it out.
So the only thing that we would do is we would be recommending a new series of variances. So let's say, well, thinking about it, right, is so typically if I was to construct a carriage house, I would have a series of variances with that property as it relates to multiple dwellings, things of that nature. Did any of that come up?
I think by the stipulations, they avoided all of that stuff because it was, you know, the owner basically agreed to not use it as a residential space by agreeing to those conditions.
Right.
So it's a detached garage.
Completely. So I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is that
I think we would use carriage. Okay.
I would too.
So, and if
But
I
it's
can
a carriage
remember,
house,
they really did a extraordinary job on details and materials and the stainless steel pool and all of that stuff. So I don't even know why. I guess back then we were very cautious, and I guess we've crossed the Rubicon when it comes to finished spaces and carriage houses and what I can do with my own property. So that's why I asked why.
Yeah, so they're asking for this to be more of a kind of guest in-law suite, as it has been requested. They are not intending to rent it out, though I believe there was a bunch of the owner's daughter residing in there as she goes to school.
Yeah. So I don't have any problems with this.
Okay, awesome. Okay. I'm just still thinking about myself. I apologize. So right now, the only thing that we would just need to do is to recommend. Just trying to understand, guys. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It took me a while to wrap my head around it.
It's tough only because of if this came in, it would have come in as potential carriage house, a habitable space, regardless if it's another dwelling opportunity, I should say. Right? It has plumbing, it has building services associated with it. It would be considered a dwelling, regardless of who is occupying it. I'm presuming, right, that I'm correct. So if they were able to avoid those requirements because there was no finish associated with it. It was more about the aesthetic of the outside. Plumbing, all of the utilities, all of those things are not part of this. So now, plumbing, all of those other related items are going to be involved. Am I talking this through correct?
Sure.
So with that, there wouldn't be an address, there wouldn't be a separate address, there wouldn't be any of that. Plumbing, all those utilities, everything associated with that, are they already available? So nothing. So it's literally just only the finish related to
Insulate and drywall and finish. It's the use.
the use.
Yes.
It's just the use.
Yeah. And the only reason I'm asking is because if all of a sudden we negate those things, does it open up another zoning issue, is what I'm saying, right? So if we pull those things off, or we go back to approving or appealing those previous stipulations that were applied to the property, is there an opening for the need for it going back through a dwelling opportunity or something of that nature? That's what I'm just asking. Will it constitute another zoning variance?
So I would say no.
Okay.
And I would say
I'm asking.
25 years has taught us a lot
Completely.
about carriage houses and use.
Right.
And
Density.
it would be different if they were saying, I want to add 2 more dormers, and it's an existing thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know why,
At that time.
no, I don't know why in 2022, we would not approve what is being asked.
No. And I guess I'm not-
And if it does trigger something else,
Yeah.
that's not
That's not us.
us.
Understandable. Again, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it to understand.
No, I see how you arrive at that,
Yeah.
or could consider that.
Completely.
But to Commissioner Hissen's point, I think it would simply be a recommendation that
Yeah.
pursuant to 31-16-11, as a site alteration, they shall be permitted to utilize the space for its original intended use, similar to the other carriage houses that we've recently
Yeah.
approved.
And considering the ones that are across the alley.
Exactly.
And keep in mind, if this does trigger any additional variances, they'll have to.
Yep.
come back.
They'll be back in front of us if
I
it
did
triggers.
reach out to zoning regarding the parking variance, and they didn't say any additional things would pop up. They just said it was okay as it was.
Okay.
So with that being, thank you so much for the clarification. Thank you so much for talking it through. Can we get a can we get a motion to recommend the appeal of the previous stipulations? Or I'm presuming that that's what we're asking for, because it's not new variances. It's an appeal of the prior conditions that were applied to the new construction.
So,
Right? Am I right in saying that? Am I saying this
yeah,
correctly?
just as.
As I understand it, yes.
Okay.
In which you ultimately would issue a COA for them to proceed.
Yes, so
Exactly.
I'll issue it. It'll be the same certificate of appropriateness form, but it'll be as a recommendation. Since this is related to variances and it was originally issued as a recommendation. So because it's related to zoning, it's not so much in approval as a recommendation for the approval, because zoning handles the approval. And I do want to note that I am speculating about not needing additional variances, but considering I am not building and zoning services, please take my assumption with a grain of salt.
So in theory, it's a recommendation, and then ultimately the process will continue on, and we'll see what happens, right?
Right.
Right. So is there a motion to recommend the removal of the stipulations that were applied to the previous variance? Right, say that correct.
I will make a motion for VV 22 03 010937 Dennison Avenue for recommendation to remove previous conditions of use.
I second that motion.
Any further discussion? We feel pretty clear as a group in terms of what's being asked. Okay, I just want to make sure. Just want to make sure. Okay, go ahead and cast a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Recommend.
So for your consideration.
Yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to understand a little bit better. Thank
I
you.
think I understand now. It's the next step is the BDA, right?
Yes, so I'll issue the recommendation within probably 3 to 5 business days, and then we'll take that to BZA, and if there's any additional variances, they might send you back to us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Anthony. So that was 8.
So that was number
That was 7, and so we were missing 4. We had
Yes.
skipped 4.
And I don't think
Okay.
I saw anybody else walk in.
So number 8. Thank you.
Okay, so the last item is our only conceptual, which is number 8, which is VP-22-03-011. This is for 21 West Hubbard Avenue. And I was, if there's anybody speaking, I'm speaker slips before I finish with my staff. I don't think anybody is here, but just as a caveat.
People with us.
Okay, I don't recognize everybody without their masks on.
Yeah.
So
I just figured.
no, it's like everybody's like,
Yeah.
oh, I know you now.
Proposal for a big development and not have a full crowd, right?
Yes.
So
But
hopefully that's a good sign for, what we're going to present.
So this is the conceptual review to construct a new 12-story mixed-use building at 17 to 25 West Hubbard Avenue. The new structure would be built in the rear section of the building, maintaining the historic facade, designed with all 4 sides being masonry and with the intent to select a brick similar to the existing materials. For the short north design guidelines, signage should be pedestrian oriented. When additions are presented, the request is typically to offset the original or the addition from the original material. Now to the commission, is the proposed height appropriate? The addition is along the rear portion of the building with the fronting along West Hubbard Avenue in North Wall Street. Hubbard Park Place, which is west of the site, only appears to be 6 stories tall. And to the east in Italian Village, there's 800 North High, which is 10 stories tall. So the commissioners should offer design feedback that can be utilized by the applicant to further refine the proposal for a review at a future meeting. Basis for recommendation is City Code 3116.11, the standards for alteration. All of them apply, but specifically the distinguishing characteristics of the property should not be destroyed. The removal or alteration of any historic material or distinctive architectural feature should be avoided whenever possible, as well as City Code 3116.12, the standards for new construction. Again, all of them apply. Calling out specifically height as viewed from the street should be compatible with adjacent contributing properties. Set-offs may be used at upper levels. The physical size and scale shall be compatible to existing contributing properties without overwhelming them. And Sean, I will hand it back to you so we can swear in our applicants.
Thank you, ma'am. Can you state your name for the record?
Mark Wood.
Dan Haynes.
Do you agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. Do you want to go ahead and offer some dialogue regarding the
Sure,
presentation?
I think Dan will be the presenter, but I guess I just wanted to give a little bit of background. Years ago, we came to the commission and got conceptual approval to do a vertical development on a portion of the back of this building that we never advanced. From just a perspective of someone who's been in the neighborhood for a very long time, I feel like a lot of times these large scale developments get value engineered. And they aren't necessarily held to the same standards a single family home in the historic district would be required to be committed to. I feel like our projects that we've done in the neighborhood are the highest quality that we've seen within the larger scale developments. Our goal here is to, we've committed to low grade structured parking. Our developments include the Hubbard Park Place that's right behind this development, the Sanborn addition to the Denison, the Woodco building. We did the Lincoln office building, the Lincoln garage where it's masonry on all sides that you don't see very often with the parking garage. Our Bruner development, I think, really fits into the neighborhood nicely. Our goal here is to make this our most elegant building that we've developed. We really think that great architecture defines neighborhoods, and our goal here is to do something really special that's kind of iconic to our brand and to the neighborhood. And so I guess I just want to communicate our commitment to doing something special here. We're not going to value engineer. We're not going to present one concept and come back and ask for considerations. The costs become too high. What we present here is what we intend to build. And so I guess I just wanted to kind of give that flavor to what we're here to present. I think the property is uniquely situated. We understand that we're showing an aggressive height here, but we think that this is kind of a unique location within the district that can accommodate this type of scale. But I'll let Deanne present the architectural aspects of the project.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for sharing. So let me quickly walk you through kind of programmatically how the thing is working and stacking, and then we can talk about massing and then in the materials. And I'd love, I don't need to rattle. If you have questions, jump in right away. We can have this as a conversation. So programmatically, we are think of the building as the building that we are looking at is where the Hubbard Grill is, all the way back to the retail components that go to Hubbard Park Place. That sort of is the site. We are maintaining the first section of the retail pieces that are on High Street. Programmatically, we have retail that will be facing Hubbard. We've got access to parking and the mechanical spaces that we'll need because this will be a high rise in the back. We have 3 levels of really tight parking in there to try to keep the height down, but also make sure that we are parking this thing appropriately. Then we have 2 levels of offices so that this is a true mixed use piece. And then we have 6 levels of retail, 6 levels of residential on top of that, with on top of that, step back is sort of an amenity space. So massing wise, the way that we're thinking about this, so if we think of a section all the way starting from the hotel that's on High Street, across to High Street, we've got, and then to Hubbard, and then into more of the residential areas. We have in section, we're trying to maintain on High Street a really good setback of the 75 feet of the area that we're maintaining. We've got a base that has the retail and the parking and some of the offices that will then line up with the Hubbard Park Place that is to the west, that then steps down into the neighborhood. And then we're trying to, as much as we can, instead of trying to build all the way out to High Street, sort of condense that piece up and make it a tower that comes up that we then have the residential pieces on top. The top level of the residences is 140 feet. That's their floor plate. Then we've got an amenity that's at 150-ish. I'm reading my numbers right, if I remember those right. And the roof itself is at 166 of that amenity space. And then we've got some mechanical space on top of it. But that is sort of the height that we have sort of going east to west, then north to south, if you will. We are still maintaining and stepping back as we come up with sort of balconies as we come up, and then also the amenity space is a setback across the way from us from Hubbard. So the Gray Stone Court Apartments has their own little setback with parking, and we are trying to, on Hubbard, sort of make that the front address of the new tower. So it's sort of addressing as we can kind of see in the images there, a great canopy. We have the retail piece and then the lobby that gets us into the office buildings that go up above. I think that sort of is describing the massing of these pieces. And I think that those massings, it's not out of scale with the developments that are happening, I believe, in the neighborhood. And it allows us to get, make sure that we can maintain the proper amount of parking. We get true multi-use, so we get offices in the building, and we've got have some residential in there as well too, with some densities that I think what Columbus is needing. Let me just go through my list. Oh, so the things that I wanted to talk about also sort of architecturally is that, as we get to the residential, we're stepping those back, and we've committed to a glass balcony on those pieces that are at the corners going up. That sort of gets us some more depth to the building. Along sort of High Street and along Wall Street on the backside, we're introducing a bay window on the two ends, and then we have in the middle of those a bay balcony, which will be a slightly different railing type that's happening up and through there. Yeah, and then once again, the pool levels, we're stepping that back. I think materially, we're trying to play off of what's happening with the Hubbard, the Hubbard Grill, that section of retail, sort of that limestone piece. Sort of taking some inspiration of the material that's around there and trying to find a brick, and we're going to do that on all four sides that work with that limestone that's up front. And then we'd like to accent that with glass and metal that would be a dark bronze kind of piece in appearance. And sort of lastly, as Mark was saying, all of the projects that they've done, I think that they've always maintained and sort of they've really challenged us to make sure that that level of detail and materiality is in the projects, and we're excited to carry that through. So with my long, maybe no sentences with a comment, explanation, do you have any questions or?
I'd just like to add one more thing, just, understanding that the conflict of a project like this in as narrow of a site as we're proposing instead of something that's wider. I mean, our parking is very expensive, inefficient, because we can't spread it out. So it's the only other project I would say is kind of as inefficient with parking would be our Lincoln office building where Del Mar is, where it's just, just go around circles and park a few on each floor. But that just, the economics of trying to make that work, are supported through the height of what we're proposing. But it's, it's, if we weren't a kind of multi-generational approach to development, I don't think most developers could justify the investment that we're trying to do here. We approach these as each time we do development, we want to build the community and complement the other investments that we have in the neighborhood. I don't think as a standalone, anyone else would be coming in here and proposing this development, with this,
It's an easier way for us to make the numbers work would be more efficient parking. Is sort of like, well, maybe we would come in with an ask to get us closer to High Street and sort of a bigger block going up, I think would be an easier thing for us to.
Or not to have the retail on Hubbard or, there's just different ways to skin it.
To make sure that we've got a nice retail and a nice sort of on-street presence.
All right, so comments. So this is obviously conceptual. So, it can be a little bit of back and forth to try to understand that, but.
First question I had, because I think part of this is going to get to the kind of the nature of what can be considered historic structure along Hubbard that will be removed. The retail space, commercial space there in terms of square footage, how does that compare to the existing? And then, the tenants, is that tenants remaining? Do you have new ones in mind? And what's the thought of just the activation?
I guess I don't have an answer to the programming of the retail at this point. I mean, we won't be able to maintain the existing retail. We came to the commission 15 years ago to get approval to put the windows in because they weren't there, and there was a lot of pushback when we wanted to do that at that time. I think they've been successful and are really kind of helped activate Hubbard. Both the that we did the lease with, we did it for a 15-year period because it kind of aligned with when he was looking to retire, thought he would retire. He's now moved out of state. We have with the Columbus iWorks space, we've communicated with our tenants what our plans are, what we're trying to do. I'm sure exact timing because there's a lot of process with utility relocations and approvals and all those types of things. Columbus iWorks, we've suggested that they could potentially move to our Parkside on Pearl development, which we're hoping to break ground on within the next 6 or 7 weeks. But we have a footprint on the second floor of that building with a really elegant lobby. The salons, I think there's a lot of kind of that concept that's around town that can accommodate those users.
the time comes. So, you always hate to have the idea of displacing a tenant. But I think we, at least we have another home to offer, at least the Columbus Iworks, I think could work if they were interested. And, this was contemplated at the original time that we did the leases 15 years ago. It was, again, very aligned with kind of the timeline for the retirement of the individual who was helping to build out those spaces.
So speaking of that retail, so that retail would be demolished, the portion where the iWorks is and the back portion of Hubbard Grill?
Yeah, and it would be refabricated. And if you look at kind of the rhythm of the ground floor of what we're proposing, it's very similar to what's there now in terms of rhythm of the retail storefronts. So we want the building to fit in and feel appropriate to its location. I think if today I had one of our Derek did a modeling for me where we just cut off the top of the building and just looked at the ground floor of the existing compared to what we're proposing, and it's remarkably similar as you look at that ground floor experience.
And then there would be no basement structure to this?
No, it's just not practical with this site. We have done underground parking with a lot of our sites. Just the circulation doesn't work here with this project.
And then how many total parking spots do you guys have?
So right now we have 75.
And then what's the total residential units you guys want?
We are 6 levels and we're still studying that. We're between 6 to 8 per level. So that's going to be between 36 and 48.
And then have you all conducted a parking study with respect to what you described as Hubbard Avenue, and then that is what, Wall Street?
We have, and we've actually also looked at, we've looked at both traffic analysis through there of turning radiuses and that sort, and also since they would own both properties of using the Hubbard Park Places parking as well into the mix if we look at sort of office levels, things of that sort. So
during the daytime, we have excess parking. You probably remember about that parking just a little bit in total, especially during the day. We only have about 12,000 square feet of offices in that building. And we have about, I think, 140 parking spaces on that site. So when the residents, work, we have certainly have extra daytime parking, workday parking. So the synergies between the two projects really work nicely together. And our programming within this building still needs to be, fine tuned, in terms of exactly how much office we're proposing and how many residential units. We need to get into the weeds of that a little bit more still. But we think that we have a really good parking solution for this building. I think it even benefits if we do offices with the fact that we have the building across the street.
Something I'd be curious about is not just parking, but just general traffic. So when you think about High Street, North and South, Hubbard, which is becoming much more busy, I'm sure you guys have noticed. But then if that project goes on Pearl, you now have the high rise across the alley or across from High Street where Town Hall is. Coming off that alley, it's a yield to make a left. It appears to be, and I say this without any study, but I'd just be curious what that traffic analysis is, not just for parking, but if you take now 4 high rises, if we'll call it, in that intersection.
yeah,
I have no facts, you have no facts. I'm just simply stating it out there as something I'd be curious
I think
to
that, we're
know what that
we're
is.
using the word sort of kind of high rise and stuff, but both of them are kind of, 40 to 45 additional units. So I think on street sort of traffic and traffic turning, I would suspect it's far more sort of, in the evening, someone coming down trying to get to a bar kind of traffic than from the residences and stuff from those low numbers. Now, we are consciously trying to make sure that we are maintaining them into the building and we're able to handle those cars as well too. So
here's this is a large project and your points are very big. I'm crazy excited about this, but let's cut to the chase. What you were talking about, your east-west axis, what this block is gonna look like, what the height is, what the massing is, that's what we need to see. And parking study. Because if the neighbors come out, those are the things they'll want to hear about. But I mean, as far as seeing what that Hubbard block looks like from High Street to Park and vice versa, and how that steps down to High Street, how it goes north and south, those are things that are gonna speak volumes. What you said, I should have seen visually, because I'm visual. And once we get to those things, I think I'm not so crazy about the temple on top, but I understand why you're doing it. But I think it's an exciting project. And, you know, we always get into the language and the notion of taking that, you know, where they service the cars. And it became a big piece with the Kaufman project. Do you have a picture of that alley? Because I think one thing, and this is really going into the weeds really quickly, but one thing about that garage is the stepped gable along the alley. So, no, the old building, if this is,
The photographs.
if this is your alley, this is where I would see the stepped gable, 1, 2, 3, then comes over, and then 1, 2, 3 down. That, I mean, things like that, not being too literal, but markings like that, talk about something was at here and there's being something built above. Those are little things that go, that whole language could go a long way with that project.
But I mean, if we look at that sort of elevationally, that was done for that building that's covering up sort of its simple sort of roof form, right? I mean, we could go through and sort of say, well, we're gonna do something architecturally that sort of relates back to the old building that's no longer there. I think we took the approach architecturally of saying, well, let's sort of imagine what this building should be if we were going to create something kind of new in its space. And that's sort of how we approach the elevation basis to it.
And so what I would say to you is, from an idea of taking that Quonset, that was a
Right.
typical, beautiful wood arch, which was typical in buildings.
Right.
Whatever you can do to mimic that and talk about it. I'm not saying you recreate it.
But
And we could go academic on this left and right.
Yeah.
And if you want to go that way, please do. But what I'm saying is that's something that attaches to the front of that building, which was, this is the showroom, this is the garage. Now, what I build between it is a wonderful building, but I think you need to have those references.
And Jeff, to speak to your point as far as setbacks and stuff, I think that's one of the reasons that I think this project works so beautifully and can accommodate something like this. You know, so often you look at the hotel across the street, they have maybe 2 or 3 step backs as you go vertical, and they're pretty narrow setbacks. Did you ever look to see how far back
It's about 70 feet.
About 70 feet, you know, with the natural break with the historic front facade of the building.
So if you go to the sort of the view that's looking down High Street, if it's not, it's the, go down right there. You can kind of see. So that gives you, that is the visual I was describing right there, right? So you've got the Hubbard, you've got roughly that 70 feet. We're stepping up and then we step back down. The base of our building is then lining up with the Hubbard itself, but this then goes down into the neighborhood. That's the visual I was describing.
But just talking about kind of this
Okay.
Further out, that you see what.
I'm talking the whole
Across the
block,
street,
what that elevation is, and actually, I might go across High Street.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you look around buildings, you know, early adapters, Bizzuti, all these people that were gonna do high rises that didn't get to do high rises because the neighborhood. If you look around the neighborhood, there's a whole sundry of heights. It's what you do with that height and where it is addressed within the block and the neighborhood and High Street that gets you your sweet spot. So I'm not saying it's too big, I'm not saying it's too small, but in context, I can't, that representation talks about the building and the beauty of the building, but it really doesn't give me a context of that space that you're building on. But I think I'm crazy about it. I like the whole idea of the porches. I like the high end. I like the parking. I like everything about it. And then the other thing, the little, this is again, these are just these little stupid things. I would like to see, again, some kind of cutout or some kind of differentiation between the old surface of the Hubbard and this new really great vertical thing, because it should read just all itself.
The connective
Yeah,
piece.
the
Yeah,
connector piece.
that's probably my biggest. I agree. I think it's a beautiful design, but yeah, that connector piece in between, that something needs to happen there.
Commissioner Conyers?
So it's so funny, obviously Jeff and I think alike. And the biggest thing that for me, I was kind of thinking about the past history of the last, 2 or 3 years regarding large projects is understanding the contextual relationship to the object. So how does this object fit in? How does it have a certain relevance to, or how, what is this association with the other things around it that says this height and this mass and where it's located is appropriate? That's what we've always been asking ourselves with the larger projects. So just kind of opening that lens up a little bit, in section and the elevation, I think you start to get those relationships. I think I think back when there was a diagram that was kind of shown about, maybe from, I don't know if it was from the cap or all the way up to maybe, it might have been Fifth. And it was kind of these larger objects or these elements were high and they're started to kind of create this relationship across the street within the district, something that I think understanding that kind of mapping or coding could really give us an understanding of, how does this thing really feel like it's fitting in? And,
We can come back with that, and I think one of the things that we feel like benefits this too is that the mass is not in a city block, it's more of a pencil type development compared to what you've seen in some of the.
But what's really interesting, and I don't know whether I should even open this door, but when you're looking at this, you see that? The difference? I don't know do you know how big that is? This space?
It's around 14 to 16 feet.
Oh, that's all it is?
Yeah, even
I mean, I see this facade, I see this thing, you see this line? I see this thing coming out and dropping. And so it truly is a step. Not a 5-foot step, but it's, so the step starts back here and goes up to this level, and then it goes up. And versus this.
Yes, I think that would be fantastic. We're trying to also maintain sort of the retail components, and those components go back to the depth of where our piece is coming out. So we didn't want to sort of come into those and sort of say, we're going to tear off even more of the pieces. Right? But no, I know exactly what you're saying.
Or maybe you could lollipop it, I don't know what you could, but I mean, it almost wants that.
Right.
Okay. Maybe you can be creative. But I think it's exciting, and I think it's and I think if we nail down the big things that create undertow on these projects early on, I think we'll be fine. I really do.
I agree. There's been a lot of positive projects that your camp has done. So I mean, some of the things that you mentioned, quality of materials, detailing, all of those things, that's not a concern. It's really just trying to battle through and trying to understand the appropriateness and what is appropriate as it relates to the context. And that's going to be the story that the neighborhood is going to really want to as well. So sure. I mean, you know. 7-Eleven is a great, I mean, I know you were behind that particular project. That was a great project as it relates to the dynamic and the discussion that the commission had, the neighborhood had, and the development group. So this is a very, very, very similar project as it relates to that, scale, et cetera. So, so yeah, don't want to talk about architecture. Let's try to, get the other things first and then build up to it. But that's just kind of, that's my thought in terms of, architecture. I don't want to get into that all of a sudden, all that's, I'm sure it's gonna be phenomenal.
Well, don't give them that much credit.
Always.
Let's not get ahead of the curve.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Jack. Anything else that we want to offer to help the applicant?
So I think for us, one of is trying to understand sort of overall size and scale, and I understand the requests. If we get back to you by St. Patrick's Day, sort of these sections, can we get this back on the thing next time and sort of, because we really, it's critical for us to understand the parameter which we can design to sort of actually get further down the road.
Part of what we're trying to do is to evaluate the utility relocations and service needs for the project. Get the civil planning started on this because that takes a long time. Exactly where we're going to land stuff on the ground floor to support the building and those types of things are what we're trying to advance. So that's part of our goal,
So I'm all for that. The only thing that I'm cautious about on these large scale projects is doing anything out of sequence. So I'm going to say, Kimberly, what?
I think having those drawings that you requested would be a good step because we'll be looking at the massing the height, which might be another conceptual application, but and kind of nailing that down. I think that's where we should start and we should kind of hone in on those details.
It would be helpful to, just kind of part of that is to understand the height as it relates to these other elements. There's been a lot of exhibits over the past several years that team members have provided. And so just kind of refreshing some of that knowledge.
Sure.
I think would just be helpful in terms of a comparison of certain things. I think you'll see it visually and graphically, but just having an understanding, because, stories, and I want to make sure that we kind of think about that. Stories are really kind of not necessarily relevant because the stories really speak to what is programmatically driven and what it's needed. So we really, really need to kind of think about the height and the step backs of those elements, you know what I mean, as it relates to that, So just, if we can have some of that data as part of the discussion, that may help us get that one step forward a little bit faster. Just kind of talking out loud, guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that whole, the middle elevation there, just that whole step from High Street to your building, then across the alley, it steps up or down, I don't know what it is, and then it comes down to Park Street. That is going to be very telling, as is north to south, just to get, because I can't say, it could be a sweet spot and it could be that tall. I don't know because I can't get it.
You don't have the confidence.
And then north to south really needs to stretch a ways, right? Like I feel like east to west is kind of across the street,
I think we should get at least to the back of the Moxie.
Yeah.
All the way over down to Park Street.
Yeah, I think the north to south, north to south probably wants a bit more, a few blocks worth of information.
Yeah, I think it's exciting.
Thank you for the feedback. Appreciate it.
Go ahead, Dan. You got anything else?
Well, I just sort of, so we're coming back for conceptual pieces, but I'm just trying to make sure that if we get that information back enough, that we would be able to get a resolution. If everyone's agreeable with what we show, that's like, okay, we're good with sort of those parameters. Now go back and, really get us stuff so that we can approve the actual, the building itself.
So team, do you guys think that, from really the focus is trying to understand, to try to help them, is trying to understand the overall height and the mass of where it's located, right? And just kind of painting the picture of an envelope, right? How big is this thing? So really the architecture is irrelevant for this conversation to allow that.
So we can have sort of the discussion on the bowstring truss and all of that, but I don't think we need to have that until we get through.
Right.
sort of
Yeah,
big
that's why I didn't want it to
projects,
go down in the weeds. So
Right.
last two big projects. Think you got it nailed down, and then all of a sudden, the neighborhood comes out and says it's the height, it's this or that. That's why another conceptual where you bring and you basically show what that is, so you can not, basically what it is. And then, this building in the neighborhood is this tall, this building in the neighborhood, so it gives a context of where you're going, it gives an elevation, so we can really say, that massing is great. And then that's when you guys can come back and say, and drill down, and then it's down the road. If we take it that path, then we're not gonna have a back and forth, detail height, detail massing, and we've gotten in that boat a couple times, and it hasn't served us well, versus starting off with asking the hard questions. What is the height? Is it relevant to the neighborhood? Thomas's part, traffic, all the things that neighbors and residents are gonna ask. And then you put the second layer on is the business community. And I think if we nail those things down.
So let me understand for traffic. So we, I think, have a pretty good understanding of what the internal parking and pieces of that sort are. Like, we can show that we can accommodate our parking needs internal to the building. Are you saying you would like to see what those additional 75 cars that we have are going to impact corners?
Exactly, and I mean in the sense of, right now, there's no one in the audience, right?
Right.
Once you start talking about that, 100 people are gonna come to the next meeting. So to avoid that, because I have no facts, you have no facts, and I don't think it's gonna pass muster if you just say, we have enough space for our cars to fill in here. Because the people who live in the building at Hubbard Park Place who no longer will have their view, or now have to live through the construction, or will fight those same cars in Wall Street Alley, Hubbard Alley, and these other alleys. Those are the things that I think about are gonna fill this, as I just think about the process. And like Commissioner Hisson says, we talk about, is this tall enough? And then you go back to the traffic, or, that type of thing, versus trying to address some of those things systematically going down. So I just think about it from a process standpoint as, what is it that gets your neighbors fired up? And, what communications are taking place with the existing residents, as well as the person who's got to make that left turn every day and yield and deal with that type of thing. That's what I think about,
So far, we've had nothing but really positive feedback from everyone we've interacted with, on this project. So hopefully we won't have the neighborhood, challenges that sometimes are,
I mean, in many
we won't
terms,
say,
they can
won't
make
say
or
it won't
break
happen,
you.
but I just, we have our fingers crossed that, this is really along the High Street corridor, it's not encroaching too far into, the single family home, the further down the street. I think it can be kind of contained to that High Street corridor in terms of, expression and impact and all those types of things. So anyway, we're coming back with, it's great feedback, and let us kind of come back.
The first good move, I'm gonna give the wood company in. The first good move was Park Street. That's the whole buffer of the neighborhood, quite frankly. And so what happens in this middle space is gonna be interesting. And to the north, you have the Greystone, which is vertical, and you have those townhouses, which are vertical. So really, it really is what that middle piece is gonna be that's gonna, really make the building, actually not make or break it, but it's gonna make it sing, depending on what you do.
I really think, from my perspective, having the parking, separate the Greystone from the street creates a nice, gives some relief.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah. I think it's.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Yep.
Before we get too far down the weeds for anything else, let's go back and continue number 4, due to the absence of the applicant.
Gentlemen, can we have a motion to continue application number 4?
Yes, it is BV 22 03 007 686 Park Street.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly, for that. As far as the number, is there gonna be a motion to continue, guys?
Motion to continue VV 22 03 007 686 Park Street.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to continue passed. Is there any additional business, Kimberly?
Yes.
Okay.
So new business I have down for nominations of new officers. We are all here. We want to discuss it. We don't necessarily have to vote tonight.
What did we agree to last time? What were the discussions?
Well, with Sean not being here, we
Yes.
nominated him.
Okay, and then what were the other positions?
We have chair and vice chair.
Sean, something that we did mention, I think is just, I think some of your concerns, correct me if I'm wrong, could have been in terms of taking on that responsibility of just extra role of when you can't be here and just being accountable.
That's correct. So sometimes I have a lot of meetings that are around this time, project meetings and such. And so if there is a need over this cadence, plus practices and things like that for kids, if there's a need that I have to step out because of that conflict, I don't want to see us, I don't want to see the rhythm and the cadence that we have going on be detrimental or to be impacted by that.
So we kind of talked about that.
So I'm willing, because what's cool is there's a lot of great synergy amongst the group right now in terms of being able to help one another. And so I'm willing from that perspective, but I need someone strong that's committed to being available. So that way I don't feel guilty when I have to step away.
No, don't feel guilty about it.
But you know what I'm saying? But you know what I'm saying? Because I think you guys understand. There's moments where I just can't get it.
Right.
And so I want to make sure. I don't mind doing this because at the same time, I feel like I got great support.
Yep.
And I'm hopeful that we get some additional great support given our seats that are open.
Right.
And then it doesn't necessarily fall on the burden of 4. It may be fall on the burden of 7.
Yep.
But when we start thinking about this, even though there's a vice chair, there may be a need for somebody else too as well to be able to support that effort. And I think all of us can, but I think we just need to be committed to that. If I feel like I'm going to step up and say, yeah, I can. Because I don't want to falsely say I can. And
well, that's what we talked about. We all agree with what you just said.
Okay.
Wholeheartedly.
Okay.
And, you know, myself in particular, just being still relatively new into the commission, I'd like need to step up, I will, but I like the idea of having somebody leadership, somebody who's been in that seat a bit longer and you do such a phenomenal job at it to continue to observe and learn before agreeing to a role like that full time. But obviously, any of us to step into that as needed.
Because I think Thomas, him, can step in and learn as we go with you taking the lead. I'm not so, as we're talking about new materials, whether we have to stay with the traditional chair, vice chair.
Right.
Versus saying, this is the agreement, or this is the leadership, or this is how we're trying to structure this within the guidelines of what a commission is supposed to be, but actually referring to the real world situation.
Yeah.
And I don't know about those things. And I think, Kimberly, you're going to have to.
So per the bylaws, you've got.
And obviously Commissioner Connor wasn't here, but what we had softly proposed was you continuing as chair, nominating a vice chair, for purposes of the bylaws, but understanding that, you know, we would all be. But understanding that it's not, oh my goodness, Conyers can't make it today.
Yes.
And here I am again.
Last
It's one of those
minute.
things where, yeah, we all have last minute things that just happen and not necessarily Jack or Mark or someone who is like chair and just constantly doing it, understanding that, you know, things are going on.
Okay.
And I would be open to, well, you thinking about it, or if you want to, if you're okay with it, do we vote today, or do we need to vote? I don't know. I know we've been kicking it a little bit too,
Yes.
so Kimberly probably needs to get
If
this.
Sean is.
I think we should, if you're comfortable with what we're saying and you want to, we can vote tonight.
Again, I'm comfortable from that perspective. I'm totally fine from that perspective. The key is like I told you, I just didn't want to be put in a position where I'm gonna impact or negatively impact our rhythm to service.
Agreed.
So to make us all happy, I think I would nominate Commissioner Conyers to proceed as chair, Commissioner Skinner to proceed as vice chair, and if there's a second of that nomination.
Second.
And before we vote for comments, my unofficial position for the team. You know, when you haven't been here, we've proceeded on, or even when, you know, you were not chair, so I don't think this is something where, oh my goodness.
And the same with you in supporting and nurturing going on. I think it's a good fit.
Right. And I don't mean like to throw this at you guys too, because I'm here as well. So like I understand you're new as well, but I think also both of your architectural backgrounds, some of the details and intricacies that both of you get into, I think you would continue to learn from Conyers. And I also learned different things just listening to you all as well. So that is my background in kind of doing that. So it's not a on you, not me type of thing, but so yeah.
So do we have other things? Because we don't have a treasurer. No.
I don't believe we need to have.
We don't need that.
So
Okay, awesome.
let's
I
act
wanna
on,
be sure.
let's act on this motion.
All right.
So we got a motion, we got a second, and now we just need to vote. But that was our comment section.
Is there any other dialogue that's needed? No,
Nope.
I'm okay. Awesome. I appreciate it, obviously. And that's the important.
So I think we technically have to do it as two separate motions because we might need to have a quorum.
Okay.
So the first motion would be to nominate Commissioner Conyers to serve as chairman of the Victorian Village Commission.
Second then.
All in favor? Aye.
Do I get to vote myself? Okay. Should I?
I mean, I suppose you could vote no.
No.
And then second, and then the second motion being for the vice chair. To Mr. Skinner for that position.
I second that motion. All those in favor?
Aye. Great, now all that campaign stuff I had. Share, I'm gonna have to.
I got nervous when you made the second vote. I'm like, this is where Tim kicked you under the table and you nominated me.
Oh. That's some good stuff.
We're still live. We're still live.
Oh,
Okay.
how unprofessional.
So
So-
any other?
I don't have anything else.
Okay.
So.
No, was it a motion to adjourn?
Like, to adjourn.
Awesome. So, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, you